Hello and welcome to another episode of the Game Theory Podcast. This is episode 38, and we're talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Heroes in the Half Shell.
Turtle power,
Yes.
big part of our childhood.
And
At least
part
mine.
of your children's childhood as well.
I don't even know if we knew each other in the big Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle days, did we? Like when they in their golden era?
No, this was before our friendship even was born.
Wow.
We just independently both loved Ninja Turtles. What are the odds?
I
What are
know,
the
right?
odds for two boys in the 80s, ages 5 or so, to love Ninja Turtles?
It's like like on those like stupid, shitty, like romantic, sappy people. We're like, I know he liked ice cream and I liked ice cream. Can you
It's
believe
weird. We're always finishing each other's sandwiches.
it? Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, but Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a big deal, man. So like, we'll get a little bit into like nostalgia and like things like that. A couple other things. That's where I'm gonna come at it from psychology wise. But
And I'll be looking at the tropes, the literary tropes.
oh, it's trope-tastic. Yeah, and like and how they began and stuff. But first, I was just gonna, by way of introduction, I've got that corgi puppy.
Uh-huh. Your
Dude,
Doge?
Yeah, Tiny Doge, Tiny Doge. Dog shit a lot, man. That's what I'm taking away from this whole experience.
Yeah, you know, Tim and I were reminiscing about house shitting for you, and that was the theme that kept coming up.
For house shitting or house sitting?
Do you remember when we were watching your dog while you and Amy
Oh
were
yeah,
off doing something and we were just eating pizza rolls and living the good life?
yeah.
Your dog shit everywhere. We wanted to punch him in the face.
Which dog was it?
It was Amy's dog. You just got her, brand new,
Cersei.
Cersei.
Dogs
And
shit everywhere.
all over the place. And
What
I
is
was like,
wrong with that?
oh, I cleaned up so much dog poo.
I wish I had the power to take a lot of separate shits like that. That's amazing. You know how many breaks you'd get at work? Shit time again. You just like go and shit. No, I get like one a day or like once every other day. No, and then you just you kind of get all the nasty out, and then you're done.
Yeah, it's very efficient the way we humans have evolved our pooping. Let's just take a moment and appreciate that.
Yeah, exactly. For a kid's sakes, man. Like babies too. Like toddlers take like one maybe two shits a day. It's not a big deal. I mean, they piss themselves all day, but yeah, no. I mean, they'll just dogs. They shit so much. Like I'll find like 7 different piles of small shit, and then it's and like I like to clean that, so like I end up getting all the stuff out, getting my little kid out, spraying, scrubbing, going crazy, man.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, like
I want an indoor dog.
I taught, and the thing is they were like, oh, puppies are just gonna have things like that for a while. You just gotta be patient with them because I use positive behavior support stuff. So this is behaviorism.
So you
in
don't
general.
rub his face in it every time?
Yeah, exactly. Because like I'm starting to think about doing that though because it is more efficient, right? But it also makes them more right now like. Yeah, exactly. Gambit like follows me around everywhere, like, and it's cute, and he like loves me, and like when I wake up in the morning, he'll sit by my bed, and he'll go, "Oh, oh," and I'll pull him up on the bed, and he just goes fucking crazy. He loves seeing me, and when I come home and stuff. Well, if I start punishing him, he's gonna be more like Cersei is, where she's kind of like very kind of, like, oh, hey, is this a good time or a bad time? What exactly is gonna happen here?
I don't know where I stand. I
Yeah,
haven't quite made the connection between having my nose rubbed in shit and my behavior, so I just think it's random at this point.
Yeah, exactly. And I haven't seen anything that shows that that's actually effective. A lot of times, if you think about it, well, this introduction's getting a little longer than I expected, but if you think about it, parents often like, punish their kids, and I'll challenge them by saying, are you punishing the child for them or for you? Because sometimes you're frustrated and you want to take it out on them, and you're not really thinking about how it's going to affect their learning. You're just like, what the hell? Like, if your kid like spills food or something, and you're like, what are you doing? Be careful.
You spray
like,
that nap time spray on a rag and just put it in front of their face.
yeah, chloroform.
Yes, that's what it's called.
Yeah. Yeah. So like rubbing the nose in the shit. I mean, does it really work? I don't know, but
Yeah, I don't think that. Again, I'm no dog psychologist. I'm no dog whisperer, but I often wonder if they actually even know why it's happening. They're just like, why is my face being rubbed in this? I don't even know who shit this is.
Well, I'm sure they know it's this, but they're like, what? The kind of bizarre ritual is this? And they get put outside. But typically the best thing to do is to catch them. This is how you do it with behaviorism that is effective, is you catch them, doing it. So you follow them around, and then as soon as you see them like tuck their little butt up and just start dropping load, as soon as they're just about to, you scare them. Like you can have a can with like pennies in it. That's one way people can do it. Just shake it like crazy. Scares them, right?
Just make sure they never feel safe pooping.
Right, right. Terrorize them. No. I mean, like, or you could pop them with like a newspaper or something, which doesn't really hurt. It just kind of scares them. It's something like that. But I like to scare them more. I don't know why. It just feels more humane, oddly, than smacking them. But
Just shattering their sense of security.
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
if your bathroom had like randomly there'd be snakes in the toilet, but you never know.
Have you seen that Japanese? Yeah. Have you seen that Japanese show? Well, not that one. There's hundreds probably, but there's this one Japanese show that plays pranks on people, and one of them, and it shows like people.
Yes. Are you talking about the one at work?
Maybe. What is it?
they're at work and they're like, what would people do if a dinosaur just showed up at work?
Yeah.
And there's like a raptor just chasing people through it.
People turn the corner, there's this raptor at the end of the hallway, and all of a sudden it's like, just starts running at them.
And they're just running and tripping and like holding their hands up in sheer terror.
Yeah,
Japanese know how to make reality TV.
Fucking terrifying. Like that, but this one is it was someone, it's a public toilet, so you go in there, you have to pay money for them, I guess, or something.
Yeah, but you have to deposit some yen to use those bad boys.
Yeah, so that's what they do. They put this money in, they walk in, and so they're paying for freaking privacy. They sit down, and they start. As soon as they start going, it not only do the doors come down and the walls and everything, so they're exposed to everyone. It shoots up in the air like on a hydraulic pump, so it goes like higher to like display them to everybody. And they just get mortified, and that was the whole thing. And then Japanese people laugh at them on the show, and that was it.
It's great.
That's what this is like. Like 1 out of 10 times that happens,
So
that's what. But with
this is the Dog Shit Podcast starring Jeremiah's dog's fecal matter.
Exactly. Yeah, but the problem is I've got things to do, so I haven't been following my Doge around quite as much. You're supposed to follow them around. You shake the can or whatever, and then you bring them outside, and then they're gonna need to go again. As soon as they go there, you heavily reward them, which is what I do. But when I catch him, but he is sneaky, man. Sneaky little Doge. Anyway, enough about that. Yeah. So we got a podcast here,
Yes.
and that was really fun playing Star Wars RPG last night. Thanks.
Oh yeah, that game I meticulously set up notes for and create an adventure for you to have.
Yes, and set aside a time where everyone agreed. That was awesome.
Yeah. Thank you for showing up to that.
I did, and thank you for everyone else who showed up to that. Who else showed up? I forget.
Tim
No one?
kind of did. He was. He offered to be there. He said disclosure, he was a little bit high and a little bit drunk, but he was there.
Yes, he was in a very altered state.
But he's playing a malfunctioning droid, so I figure malfunctioning human brain, it's just going to help him get more immersed in the roleplay.
Yes. And we here at the Game Theory Podcast do not condone illicit substance use,
No.
Of course. But
No, we do not, especially when it interferes with your ability to play in my role-playing games.
But Tim does. He doesn't give a shit.
He's a maverick.
He is. He's something of a maverick. Well, all right, cool. Well, welcome to another episode, guys, and I guess we'll move on to recent news.
Got a lot of news this week.
Yeah. Okay, this is recent news. What's been in the news, man?
All right, so first thing, Xbox. I didn't know this was a thing, but apparently, you know how when you sign up for Netflix, you pay your whatever, like $8-9 a month, and you get to stream onto your Wii U or your 3DS or your computer or just whatever has an internet connection these days.
Yeah.
Well, apparently, Microsoft has been charging its users to be able to do things like Hulu Plus or Netflix. So you're paying Netflix and Hulu Plus. You're also paying for an Xbox Live Gold account to be able to access that.
Wow.
Right. It's really weird. So apparently they're gonna stop doing that. That's the report, is that Xbox Live Gold may put other services behind the paywall. Oh wait, never mind. That's worse. Okay, so they might be moving Hulu and Netflix away from Xbox Live Gold into, I guess, just normal free Xbox Live, like the free version.
Okay.
I don't have Xbox, so I don't really know how they're set up. But I guess you pay for like a monthly subscription for Xbox Live Gold, and previously that's where Netflix and Hulu were, and they're moving that away from there.
Huh.
But apparently I didn't read the whole article until just now. Apparently, they also reported that to compensate for the revenue loss, Xbox Live Gold will put other services behind the paywall to make up for this shift.
Oh my God. To compensate? Dude, you guys are making bank off of like charging for internet. What the hell? That doesn't even you're not an internet service provider. It's not like PlayStation Network does that. That would make them douchey.
Yeah, I think that's just an Xbox thing. I know the Wii U has never been famous for its internet usability, but at least I can watch Netflix without paying a surcharge.
Yeah, how is that even a thing? That's so shitty. God, Microsoft, man. Like, I don't like Apple at all. Like, mostly because of how awesome everyone thinks they are, and they're not. They've been caught hundreds of times. They were judged by, I can't remember which one this was, but the FCC or someone like, maybe it was SEC, one of them judged them as one of the top 5 worst companies as far as like ethics goes, and everyone thinks they're like this great company. So weird. They're like the greatest marketing ever.
Yeah, they must have great marketers.
It was like the Pepsi versus Coca-Cola war that happened in I think the early '90s or something.
Or
And
the
Pepsi,
Sega versus Nintendo war.
yeah, yeah. Like we studied that in marketing at least. We didn't look at the Sega versus Nintendo one. That would have been a lot better use of our time. But no, I looked at, Pepsi and Coca-Cola, and Pepsi just marketed to the new generation. Remember the next generation, and they carved out a huge market share because then everybody thought Pepsi was this great company. And now Coca-Cola is like, wait a minute, well let's do that. So now their commercials are like a bunch of like guys without any shoes on running around on the beach.
Bunch of
Yeah.
young hipsters.
Yep. So they're advertising
Get
with
a
the
job.
new. Crazy, man.
Yeah, well, they just came out with a book on the console wars where they talk about a lot of the really underhanded, like, dirty things that were going on. Like, Sega was trying to destroy Nintendo. It was not very amicable at all.
Really?
Yeah, despite their rather cordial relations now, it was there was some bad blood. I haven't read the book, but from just the reviews I read, like, apparently there's a whole really dark underworld to that.
Wow. That sounds pretty consistent with most of marketing, in my experience at least. We my markets and consumers class that I took as an undergrad when I was a marketing major before I switched was it was like that. Like we looked at a ton of those cases. It's just a horrible. That's one of the things that pushed me out of it. I was like, wait, psychology is kind of like marketing, but without capitalism, right? Without the
But evil.
yeah. Weird, man. Well,
Alright.
yeah.
What else is going on?
One that has to do with the military. A subject near and dear to my heart, as much as I shit on them.
And some of our listeners as well.
Yeah. The military, as it turns out, has a plan to fight the zombie apocalypse. You guys think we are crazy here at the Game Theory Podcast, but apparently we're jiving with the government, which never does crazy things.
Right. This is a huge, very comprehensive plan to stop all manner of zombies. They've even categorized them by where the zombies are coming from: pathogens, radiation, evil magic zombies,
Yep.
space zombies, weaponized zombies. So,
Weaponized.
yeah, that's like the most common one on Resident Evil, right?
Oh, I hate when they've got like, oh man, like guns. There was some game. What was I was just watching it recently, and some of the zombies could use rifles.
Oh yeah, that's Romero canon. If you watch City of the Dead, like the end one, the
Okay.
very very end, like some of the zombies start remembering things from their lives, and I think one of them like even picks up a gun and shoots somebody.
That's weird, dude.
Yeah. So you gotta prepare for every contingency of zombies. But when I say weaponized zombies, I'm talking about the ones that are like bioweapons, like created as weapons to attack us,
Okay.
like in the Crazies.
Yeah, that document is long and comprehensive, man. Like, I think what happened, and I'm not sure, because, like, the thing about the government is they never waste money.
True.
No, I'm kidding. Anyone who's been in the military knows that's bullshit. We go to the firing range, and they'd be like, well, we signed out 1,000 rounds, and we only used 300 because everyone qualified really quickly. So who wants to just stand in one place and fire these rounds into the air? And I'm like, are you serious? They're like, yeah, 700 rounds. Who wants to do it? And I'm like, I don't. Nobody, because you have to clean your weapon afterwards, and it's just annihilated after that. But yeah, you just get on a cruiser weapon or something if there's 7.62 rounds and just go crazy.
Well, yeah, because otherwise you gotta fill in the paperwork and
yeah, because
rounds back.
And they fill out the amount that you took out. Everything's documented. So then they say, oh, you guys normally take out 1,000, but all you actually need is 300. Then you only get 300 next time. And what happens is you show up to the range, you get a couple hardcores, which is people what we call the guys who can't quite qualify, even though they get like 7 tries. You get a
Mhm.
couple of those guys shining, and you have to go back. The firing range is way out in the middle of nowhere. You have to drive all the way back to base, check out more ammunition, and they're like, "We'll give you 100 more," or something like that. It's just a pain in the ass. So they punish you for doing the right thing. But anyway, I think what happened here is more of that. Like probably like they had a bunch of intel analysts sitting around, and they were like, "Hey, sir, we completed that, the documentation on Syria or something. We finished up that INSUM." They're like, "All right." They're like, "What do you want us to do? Can we go home early?" And he's like, "No, no, 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 no going home early. So zombies."
How do we protect America from zombies?
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
you
I could
can't.
see it being like a good training exercise, like in like maybe school, maybe at West Point or wherever, maybe
Yeah.
whatever academy you're learning how to be a and it was this Pentagon.
Yeah.
So like I could see it being a good training exercise, but there's no shortage of real hypotheticals we could look at. Like what would happen if Russia just started trying to invade Eastern Europe? Let's analyze that and see what we should do.
No kidding, right? I'm sure they had something on that. Like because these guys work all day, most of them. Nah, that's not true. All day. We get a lot of time off in the military, but you work a lot and pretty productive. But anyway, so that's a thing.
All right. Well, speaking of Xbox One,
No one was.
yeah, well, we were, but then you threw in some military stuff. You're jumping around on me.
I like to get crazy.
They are projected to overtake the PlayStation 4 by 2015 in the United States.
Dang it.
And one of the big reasons for that is that they have announced a cheaper version of the Xbox One that without the Kinect.
Oh, I heard about that. Finally.
$399. Yeah, I think nobody was really that excited about having to buy a Kinect. Like they're fun if you want one, but making it just a package deal
Not
seemed like
even
that was
not even were people like not excited about it. I mean, did you read all the controversy of people being like, "I don't want you to have an always-on Connect in my fucking home,
right.
in
Are
my
they
front
still
room"?
always on? Because I remember that was originally a problem, and then I think they caved on that.
Yeah, I think they. What did they do? It's still got that feature though, because one of the big things that they wanted to implement on the Xbox One was that you can walk into your living room and it recognizes who you are, and then you say "turn on" or something like that. I can't remember the command. You give it some voice command, and then it looks at you, it sees who you are, you or maybe one other person on the couch says, "Okay, 2 players, they're both logged in instantly." Right? It's trying to make a cool system, but it needs an always-on to do that. But Microsoft is a horrible, horrible company. As much as I, buy Windows and I don't know, use Microsoft Logitech headsets and things. Um, they're still an evil empire. You just have to recognize that. It's like eating at McDonald's. You're not fooling yourself. Like,
But yeah, although McDonald's has those Ronald McDonald houses. At least there's some charity happening there. They're not like selling your data to the NSA.
NSA, yeah, not even selling it. I mean, just probably just handing it over. I mean, I don't know. I work for the intelligence community, so like, I don't need a lot of people coming in and being like, Jeremiah, protection from terrorists. Dude, that is what I did. I was a counterintelligence agent. I caught people with information like this. But there was a series of checks and balances considering how much physical surveillance or video surveillance was one of the highest ones to get. So to get the warrant for that, we had to toss it up to the DOJ, the Department of Justice, and say, hey, can we spy on these people who are just, civilians who, might have, something to do with like the Koch or some other like terrorist organization. But there was that system of balances, so it encouraged you to do something less severe. So like bugging someone's phone, for example, was easier to get past. You needed less justification than a higher one. This is like an instant. It's like, well, it'd actually be harder to like go into their house and like bug their phone than it would be just to tap in on their Connect, right? So this kind of makes it backwards, I think. And so the government and we didn't have a whole lot of oversight. I gotta be completely honest with you there. Like when the whole department or the Homeland Security thing happened, holy shit! Like all of a sudden we became this superordinate structure where we're above the other guys. Where it was done, you could do something called expediting, which means we're just going to assume you're going to say yes, and you start collecting data. And then whenever they say, oh wait, no, actually we got to this 3 months later, and you got to throw away that data, you'd say, okay, and you're trusted to throw it away, but you've already collected the information, and it's already affected your operation. So then you're like, okay, Operation Hammer is a go, obviously, because this guy isn't innocent.
Mhm.
It's essentially the same thing. You still operate on that evidence, even though you don't put it in your reports. You pretend like you never saw it, but you did. It's kind of like whenever lawyers say strike that from the record to a jury of like citizens, right?
Right.
They don't know how to strike that from their record. Like they don't know what that means. They're still going to let that affect their judgment at the end of the day. The lawyers do that on purpose.
Right. So yeah.
This is scary. That's all I'm saying.
Well, they're looking at the like they originally envisioned the Kinect as like a core part of the Xbox One, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And so unbundling it is kind of, first of all, we're going to see like a drop in like third-party support for the Kinect. So it might just end up being some kind of periphery that is rarely used.
I hope so. How do you feel about the Kinect or like any of those motion sensor things?
I don't know, I've never actually gotten to use one. Like I like the idea of like it's just one step closer to virtual reality, although with the Oculus Rift coming, it seems like a step in the wrong direction.
Hmm.
But I've seen like videos of people doing like that. There's like a sports game where it like scans your body and makes you into a like Olympic athlete, and then you play sports. Like I think that'd be fun, like as a novelty. But I don't know why I'd want that as a core part of my system. I think it like a periphery is about where it belongs.
Yeah, yeah. That's how I feel too. Well, cool. Another big announcement for Halo, or for sorry Xbox. Oops, spoiled it. Halo 5 was announced for 2015. How excited are we about this?
I didn't know Halo 4 was out, to be honest.
Yeah, I know, we need it. It came out with that like the was it Halo 4 or was it Halo 3 where they came out with like the helmet? You could buy the helmet for the limited edition,
Yeah, I remember that.
and then you could look like a fucking douchebag just like he does.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah,
I hate that outfit.
we're probably alienating a lot of Microsoft fans, but
Maybe we are, but you have to be like able to like this. You don't have to be. It's helpful in life, I've found, to distance yourself from your what you like and be able to look at it kind of and laugh at funny parts of it, like we're gonna do in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This episode is
Right.
like you look back and you say, yes, it's a big part of my life. Yes, I love the shit out of it, and I will buy everything that has to do with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. On the other hand, they're pretty fucking stupid looking. I mean, you have to admit it. So same thing with that guy. He's wearing a motocross helmet with a paintball
Right, yeah.
armor.
I always thought like it was like a motocross paintballer just going out and shooting aliens.
This is what old people think you like, and then they made you like it. You're an idiot. Like
It's
it's just,
marketing.
it is, man. Like they're like, look, extreme sports, and he's just guzzling monster drinks while he walks forward. Like you guys fell for that. Don't do that. Or if you did, at least do it like we're doing here, is where you acknowledge it. You're like, yeah, that's pretty stupid, and then you continue. But anyway, Halo 5. It's coming out for anyone who's excited about that. We never got into the series. I've tried it. I played all of them except for 4. Just don't like them.
Didn't they make like a Halo Wars, like a RTS?
Yeah, they did. Forgot about that. Yeah. Weird. Never played it.
So yeah. Anyway, for those of you who care, Halo 5 coming out in 2015. I guess nobody's that surprised because yeah, it's Halo. They're gonna keep making it as long as you keep buying them.
Yeah, it's like Call of Duty. It's
Like
here to
Mario.
stay, guys.
Yeah.
Call of Duty's fun. I was in the military. I like military shooters. I play them all. I also realize how stupid they are nowadays. If you've ever been to war, it's really insulting. Like it's like military porn. It's absurd. But anyway, whatever.
Yeah, but you wouldn't want to play a game that's actually like the military.
I know it's so
Like
bad.
12
Actually,
hours sitting on a tower, hope something happens, but I also hope nothing happens. I'm bored
Yeah,
and I'm scared.
and you just sit there and you can't do anything and it's hot. Yeah, actually, the beginning of what game was it? I think it was one of the Call of Duty games. I was like, holy shit, this is war, because like they're standing around, they're cleaning all the dust and shit. They're spraying out their Humvees, and like there's some music playing in the background, and there's people doing push-ups and stuff. Like you're trying to get, like keep yourself in shape for your PT test, because you still have those in Iraq. Awesome things like that, like. And then it's like people talking about like, they're like, hey man, the internet went out today, and they're like, God damn it, man, we paid for that satellite uplink, and we're paying like $180 a month for that, man. And they're like, I know, man, but what can you do? A sandstorm. It's like, oh yeah, it's true. I guess I won't be able to talk to my wife today. Yeah, me neither. Stuff like that. Like that's what's going on in the beginning of that game, and I was like, whoa, this is it. This is war. Like it's a big expanse. There's nothing to see because it's all desert and it's shitty, and like that was it. And then you like go to the firing range and you're popping off a couple rounds. And then hell breaks loose really quickly, and everybody scrambles, and then you're instantly a fighting force. It's pretty impressive to see, but then the rest of the game went, obviously into military porn. But the beginning of it was that way, and I can't remember which game that was, but I think it was one of the Call of Duties.
Huh. So, yeah, should we just go ahead and do one more military story while we're on the subject?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So you know how like hackers are like the Robin Hoods of like the gaming community, where always like, oh yeah, hackers, like they usually do like what's that one group?
Anonymous.
Like, Anonymous. Yeah, they usually do things that like strike out evil corporations and stuff.
Right, they have the Guy Fawkes mask,
Yeah.
which
It's like
was
this
it
whole
Fawkes?
anarchy, like rise of the people.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so more of that then?
No, no, the opposite.
Huh.
Have you ever heard of Operation Supply Drop?
Yeah, yeah, it's a charity thing.
Yeah. What's the premise?
Well, essentially, they have a lot of streams up. This is how I'm familiar with them, at least. They put up a stream, and then they'll stream for like 48 hours straight or something. You know, and have people switch off, and it has to do with you get to the military. Like I think you get video games to military guys or something. Is that
Yeah,
what?
like it's supposed to help them deal with like post-traumatic stress and depression, like playing video games.
Yeah, and yeah, and it's good.
Yeah.
It's
So
awesome.
they were doing one of those, and they were doing what's called an 8-bit salute, where they do a 24-hour gaming marathon and donation drive.
Sweet.
And Rooster Teeth kind of teams up with them. You ever watch the Red versus Blue?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I've
so
seen
it's
it.
like those guys were like helping organize it, and they got attacked by hackers, and it took out their entire webpage and made it impossible to donate to the charity.
What?
Yeah, it's still down as of this article from yesterday. So
Who would do that? Lex Luthor?
yeah, hackers. Apparently, the gaming community is pretty outraged,
Ugh.
and yeah, they just attacked it and took it down.
Dude, that's going to garner more support than it does anything else because you get the reactance effect where people are like, hey, they feel they you know they I guess this happens and then they become more likely to donate to those sorts of things or people get more likely to come to the cause of someone else. It's like if let's say a woman says, hey, there's a lot of problems in gaming, and Anita Sarkeesian does this a lot, where she'll put up comments to her the really bad ones, you know, and what that does is it incites sort of like this, sort of a rebellion or like a hey, we need to speak out against that injustice, and so you're more likely to become activist towards that. So it's good, it's good for her cause,
Yeah.
but that's that's horrible. And these things actually can be just like one or two people DDoSing it, which
Mhm.
is I can't remember what that means. So some of our listeners probably know, but it happens a lot to streamers where someone will randomly just DDoS them, which means sending a ton of packets. They overflow all these packets, so you get a lot of packet loss, and eventually it drops the site and also your stream. So it could just be like one or two douchebags. And there are military haters out there, man. It's weird. I saw some couple dudes shitting on. There's this picture. It was like pass this along if you support the troops, and it was this like dude holding up a sign that said that or something like this, and you know link it or whatever, share it.
Ugh, I hate things like that.
Me too. I was in the military, man. I support the shit out of the military, but I hate that. I was like, what is that going to do for anyone? And some of the comments were like that. But a couple of the top comments were people saying like man, F this, you're just enforcing our capitalist will on people who don't want it, blah, 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 blah. And these people are like a bunch of baby killers and shit like that. I was like, what? And I saw a bunch of responses and I thought, oh, clearly this is people setting them straight. And I click on it. No, it's other people being like, yeah, you got it right, buddy. These guys are shitheads. And I'm like, what?
Well, it's
What?
hard because like you, a lot of people don't like what the military does, but that's not like the soldier's call. Like it's like invading a country. It's not like they were like, all right, private, which country are we gonna invade today?
I know. And you all
Like
vote.
they're just there to take orders. So it's like this whole like supporting the troops without supporting like necessarily the military industrial complex. It's like
Exactly.
it's a gray line. And then a lot of people join the military for really great reasons. Like I've got a lot of friends who've been in the military and who are like, I just want to sign up. My family. Usually it's either like my family's been doing it for a long time and I want to follow that tradition, or I just felt like I needed to protect my country. Like they've usually got pretty noble intentions. But then you'll meet a lot of people in the military. Living in Korea, there's a lot of army bases and there's a lot of really shitty people in the military as well.
Oh
Who
yeah.
like just go and rape kids and like run kids over with tanks and like not on purpose, but they're like, oh, what the fuck, man, I was drunk and driving my tank and I ran over a kid, whatevs. Like they just don't like, it's just like a bunch of frat boys who just do not give a fuck about other people and they're just there because they washed out of high school and they didn't have many
Yeah.
other options. So like there's good and bad in the military. Like support the troops in general is just like a really like kind of, that's why I don't like the phrase. It's just really nebulous. It's like I support people who are sacrificing for their country. I don't support a lot of like what the military is doing. Like it's like this very nuanced issue for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a good point. I typically I like the idea of supporting the troops in general, but I hadn't thought about, there are a lot of shitbags. Like when you join the military, like everyone you're a hometown hero, right? Like not
Right.
just everyone is like, wow, dude, that's a big sacrifice, good for you. And they all, respond pretty positively. For the most part, I mean, a lot of people are like, you piece, you're so stupid. Why would you do that? But But when you suddenly that like hometown hero completely disappears near a base because you get on a base and then you're known as a Joe, right? Like you go out into the public and they're like, oh fuck, a whole table full of military guys. Shit, they're
Right.
gonna get drunk and like throw stuff around and and
Yeah,
then
they're
probably
just
stiff us for the tip.
and that's
Yeah,
in Korea had the same thing. Like people were just like not excited to see them in a lot of places because they acted like dicks a lot of time in public, or
yeah,
just
they do, man.
like
And
they
it's our
just like
job to.
pushed their way past. Like I was waiting in line to get home on a Korean air flight, and they're like, "Oh, hey, some troops. Yeah, you guys come on in," because they always get like preferential treatment from like other Americans.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh yeah, come on in, come to the front of the line." They just like pushed past me. They're like, "Out of the way, skinny," and they just like pushed past. Like, "Oh
They
fuck
said
yeah, we're going home." I was like, "What skinny? What is this? Like an '80s movie? Or are you guys the bullies of a?"
that. The Cobra Kai.
I know. I was like, "Are you kidding me with this?" And they're all, they're all super ripped and covered in tats and just like already drunk at like 10 a.m. And I was just like, "Oh god, fucking military!" Like I did not care for them in Korea
See,
because
yeah,
most of them were really douchey.
that happens, man. And like, and our job is to police our own, which we did pretty well with. Like, if you have rank, you pull it. You even out in public, you just walk up and you say, hey, soldiers, and they're like, oh, what? And then you're like, you need to cut that shit out. And like, the thing is, they assume you have rank, unless, well, not always, but then sometimes it's hard. You're not supposed to challenge it, but yeah, like once you get up there a little bit and you become like a sergeant or something, you can do that because it's usually a bunch of low enlisted. It's rarely like the sergeants or the NCOs or the officers.
Right, and
So
then they get home and they're just like heroes. Like everyone's like buying them gas or like buying them groceries, or like you'll read the bumper stickers like, if you can read this, thank a teacher. If you can read this in English, thank a soldier.
dude, but that's a big deal. Like I like that. Whenever I got home, the first person I told, we got back from Iraq on a 22-hour flight or whatever, and I
Uh,
was tired and I'd been up for like days. And my eyes were bloodshot, but I was like, well, I want to see civilians, man. I want to see civilians. So like me and a bunch of guys we deployed with went out, and we were like, I don't know, a mall. So it was like 10 a.m. and we actually got there like 9:30 because in Iraq time I think that was like in the p.m. right, like midnight or something. And we we had been up all day and night, and we went out, and the first person we saw, we went to like a clothes store I think because we had to buy regular clothes.
mhm.
And we get there, and I was like, hey, and the lady was like, hey, what can I do for you guys? And I was like, oh man, I just got back. You're the first civilian I've talked to, and I was like, this is awesome. I just got back from Iraq, and she goes, just okay, what do you want? And I was like, well, what? Like you want kind of that,
Yeah,
them to
yeah.
be like,
No, it's
welcome
it's
back.
definitely beneficial. It's nice for them, but like the entitled like kind
Yeah,
of douchey behavior, like I'm super happy to support the troops, but I'm more like on an individual basis now, just because I've met so many people who I'm just like, what? Why do I get this? Why do I don't know? It's like your career path is important, but is it more important than anyone else's career path? Like support the firefighters, support the police officers, support the teachers, support the troops. They just
but
get
the
like a lot
troops.
of
The thing is, like, I think it's the. And we're getting way off track here, but that's okay. It's is that it's we could die, like there was plenty of times where I thought I was going to die.
yeah.
And what do you do in those moments? Like you think to yourself, you think back to your family, you think back to, honestly, like some people, are not all military guys, I don't know, maybe they don't do this, but I thought, hey, this will be worth it. This is something that is important for our country, not necessarily to be in Iraq. Like there was a lot of troops who did not agree with why we're there, but you have to
uh,
do it anyway. And
right.
so you make like a noble sort of, I don't know, idea out of it. And so you're willing to lay down your life for everyone, a bunch of people you don't even know. Like that's a big deal. That's a weird place to come to,
Yeah.
personally.
Yeah, and
So
that's part of it. But again, like it's your job. Like you sign a contract that says I'm going to be shot at, and I'm going to get paid a lot of money, and or a lot of money compared to what they would have made if they just dropped out of high school and worked at
yeah,
McDonald's.
yeah.
Like not a lot. It's not a lot of money. Don't get me
No,
wrong.
I was gonna say I don't.
But
We're on
like
the edge of
a
poverty.
lot of it, like there's a reason why they give you like financial incentives and stuff. Like recruiters are like, yeah, we'll pay for your college and we'll do all this. Like it's not
Hmm.
like you're not doing it because solely because you want to protect America. Like you're doing it because you're being recompensed, and you're not being recompensed well enough in some cases. And some people do it because they want to protect America. But the assumption that everybody that's doing it is a hero is just like a generalization that is true in
Yeah,
your case. And it's
that's
true.
true.
Like, we've got some listeners who are like really like very patriotic, and they've gone and like it's true in a lot of cases, but it's also not true in a lot of cases. So just
Yeah,
like
you're right.
it just seems like a marketing thing. Like just like
You're right, and there were shitbags. I remember this who would try to opt out of dangerous missions. Like they're like, "Oh, I'm sick today. I'm sorry, I can't go." And I'm like, "You piece of shit! Like you are
right.
actively putting someone else like they could lose their family. Like that's shitty." Like there was a guy who
Mhm.
he signed on and he had been 3 times and he ended up taking his place and he had like 3 kids and a wife and I was like, "You are a piece of shit." This guy was like 18. He just got out of high school and he didn't want to die. And I was like, "So you're making this guy do it?" Oh, fuck those guys. I'm sorry, but like everyone listening, sorry about that. I'm a little passionate about that. Fuck those
Right,
guys. Fuck
right.
them. I had a family and I went.
Family Guy just did a like a spoof on that in one of their recent episodes. Like there were these three dicks like at the bar, and they took like Peter in their seats, whatever. They took their booths. Like, what are you gonna do about it? We're gonna beat you up if you try anything. And they like just beat the crap out of him, and everyone's like,
Yeah.
oh man. And they were all like rallying against him. You know, like the Peter and them were the underdogs, and these bullies were just beating them up for no reason. And then they're like, you know what? Fuck this. We're redeploying back to Afghanistan tomorrow anyway. And then they're like, what? And then they put their like military jackets on, their hoods, and suddenly everybody like lifts them up on their shoulders and carries them away as heroes. And like Peter and them are all beat up, like, oh, those guys are dicks. And everyone's like,
Right.
shut up, Peter, you hate your cut. Like it's just like this whole like as soon as like I don't like the hashtag haters who are like, oh man, those guys are shitty. They're killing babies because it's not their choice. Like they're not the ones deciding
Right.
to bomb that city. But on the same token, I hate the like unthinking like everyone that's ever served in the military is a hero. We should carry them on our shoulders because that's not true either. I just like to take it on a case by case basis, and I'll assume the best. Like I'll just assume you're a hero until you act like a dick. But
Yeah.
I've just lived abroad too much and seen them like how they represent our country overseas, and I'm just
Yeah.
not American on those moments.
That's true. We get away with a lot of shit. Yeah, and there's a lot of internal policing where it's like, oh hey, everyone get a consistent story, and then you go back and you tell the base that, and suddenly you're fine. But everybody, all the civilians, you're not winning hearts and minds, folks.
Right.
We ran over some shit with our tank, and well, that's fine. Like we just told everyone, oh yeah, firefight, something like that, like, and we get away with it. I mean, actually, they do a lot better nowadays than they did like in the beginning of the war. But still, I'm saying, yeah, it does happen. You're right.
Mm.
But anyway, I always err, like you said, on the side of assuming they're heroes because I know I did the right thing, and I know a lot of other people that did, despite the fact that it hurt their families and everything else. I could have shitbagged my way out of going into the war. You just have to fake blood pressure and a couple other things like that.
Yeah, or just don't sign up. Like we're not being drafted right now.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Like, that's how I got out of it.
Yeah, but I mean, at the time, there's a lot going on there. So, because at the time, when I signed up was 2001, and they started drafting back a bunch of 60-year-olds and stuff, and then they were talking about a draft, and I don't remember if you remember this, but it like almost passed, and I was like, you know what? No, fuck that. Like, if they need people, and I'm not like, and I'm young and I can do this, and I'm like in very good shape. Or I was pretty good shape at the time, not very good, but I should do this. I don't want a bunch of old people or people who have like a good job out there, getting ripped away from their families. So. I saw it more of as like a social equation thing. Like this is my duty to society. So I mean, like yes, I knew I could go to war. In fact, I knew I probably would go to war. But I don't know. You still hope for the best. That you get placed in a safe spot, or you get one of those deployments in Kuwait. Yeah, like Tim never went. How did that happen?
I know he signed up for the army during the Iraq War, and
he got like the cushiest, like most amazing. Oh man, and they needed intel analysts. That was his job. Like they needed. Yeah. Like there was a huge bonus for signing up because they need him so bad. That's so funny. But anyway,
yeah, I just don't like unthinking propaganda. Like if you can read this, think a teacher. If you read it in English, think a soldier. I'm like, wait, are soldiers teaching English now, or is there a country that's trying to take over our country and make us not speak English anymore? Like I don't.
Yeah, I think we probably
part of us not being able to read English is coming from, and how that's tied to soldiers. Like it's just rhetoric.
Yeah, it's a little too powerful. You're saying, but there's an underlying kernel of truth, right? Like. If we dropped our military right now, I'm pretty sure, being the history we have with the world, we'd be in trouble.
Yeah.
No. You don't think so? I guess you don't.
We're kind of, I don't know, I've done a lot of geopolitical studies, and we're kind of in a post, like I'm not going to say war's never going to happen anymore, but it's like, for example, China, our biggest rival, like it's just not economically like a good idea to try and invade America and do this whole like Red Dawn kind of situation. Like it's just easier just to buy all our shit and make us owe you money. Like it's just it's a bloodless and better way of taking over someplace. So like, there might be like some terror cell that would like strike us or something, but like even if we didn't have a military, we have more guns we have more guns in our country than any other country in the world. Like even if they're like, oh, America doesn't have a military, now's the time to strike, like we're still going to make them pay a lot. It's not going to be worth it.
It's going to be like that Germany moved through Belgium and they thought that they could just blitzkrieg.
Right, and then Belgium was like, oh, just kidding, we're going to make you pay blood, sweat, and bullets for this. So like, I just can't think of who it would be that would, maybe Russia, just because we've been pissing them off lately. But
Well, and like, there's people who need land and stuff. Like China's becoming overpopulated. We have a lot of land here. We have a lot of rural communities.
mm,
But I mean, like, maybe I've been on the other side of it, not the geopolitical, but the intel, the insums and things we take on nations and the threats we pose to them. And I feel like maybe I have an overly big sense of like how quickly we'd be overrun if we dropped our arms. But
mm,
because I know there's people who are looking at us, but I don't know. Maybe those. I mean, this is a military reports, so I mean, we kind of self-justify.
right.
It would be silly to be like, yeah, everyone's good, but I do think it's
don't
going
need
on.
any military. Well, and even just like even if we just scaled back and pulled out of all the different places we're at, like, do we need a base in Germany? Like, is that going to be a thing?
Yeah, I know, right?
Like, I don't know. Like, again, like in the past, we have had existential moments where like the country could be destroyed if we didn't have soldiers on the ground. But I don't think Vietnam's a situation like that.
Right,
South Korea, like
right.
a lot of the wars we've had have not been like, oh, if we don't have this, we're not going to speak English anymore. It's more like, well, we have oil interests there, so let's send some troops in.
Sure, yeah. Yep, it's in our best interest, and then we just add rhetoric on the top of it. But,
Right.
yeah.
And yeah, so anyway, it's a complex issue is what I'm trying to say after that huge digression. Like, I don't want to I don't want to. I'm sure we're probably offending some people who are listening right now because it's a hot topic.
Oh, I hope not. Like, I'm a military. Like,
Right.
I agree with some of your points, but I also disagree with like, us laying down our hands and stuff like that. I
No,
think
and I'm not saying we shouldn't have a military. I'm just saying we don't have that existential crisis that we did in World War II, for example.
or that's your understanding of it, right? I
Right.
would probably disagree, but again, that's just because of our sources. I don't think that's
Right.
But anyway,
My-
yeah. So news, right?
News, yeah. On a happier note, do you know Zachary Levi or Levy? How's it
Yeah,
pronounced?
dude.
Levi?
The guy from what was that show?
Chuck.
Chuck. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's cool.
I love that guy. He's awesome. Like, he's just kind of like a geeky guy. Like, he does like video game interviews. Like, he interviewed the new Lara Croft actress for the new Tomb Raider on his
Was he-
YouTube channel.
And wasn't he in Tangled? Wasn't he the voice
Yeah,
actor?
he's Flynn Rider in Tangled as well.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, he was just on Sesame Street.
Oh, cool.
And they were doing a like a lovely sunny day song with him like singing the lyrics.
Yeah.
And basically, it was just trying to get kids off their iPhones and like going outside to play now that it's
Okay.
spring and summer here.
Yeah.
And so he's just like, yeah, put down your screen, go outside, look at the graphics, and just a fun little song because kids they're kind of glued to their screens now. I don't want to seem like an old person, but like sometimes just go outside. It's a great day. I'm guilty of this too. Like it'll be the weekend. I'll be like, all right, time for some gaming, and then I'll look out the window. I'm like, oh, it looks so nice outside though.
Yeah. Happens to me all the time.
But the reason this is kind of a cool story is apparently Grover has an Oculus Rift.
What?
In the music video, Grover's walking around with a Rift on, and Zachary pulls it off his head and says, "No, check it out." And Grover's like, "Wow, look at the graphics of this park."
Wow.
But,
How did he get? These are not poor kids then.
Yeah, I don't know who their target audience is, but apparently they spent too much time on their Oculus Rift.
Wow. They actually probably just marketed for Oculus Rift without even meaning for it. Because kids are like, wait, what? That's a thing? Because it's public broadcasting. These people are probably
Grover has
ton of
one.
money. Yeah, the modal viewer of public broadcasting is typically impoverished. That's why PBS is such a big deal and why people try to save it so much because it's like,
Right.
no, this gets education out to people who might not have it otherwise. So Oculus Rift, I think, is probably the first time they've even heard of it.
Well, yeah. So I just thought that was funny. I saw an Oculus Rift and I was like, okay, I can see the kids being on their iPhones because they're getting those younger and younger.
Yeah.
But Oculus Rift, all right. Well, I'm gonna move to
Amazing.
Sesame Street.
I'm
Give
gonna
me one
tell
of
you
those.
how to get an Oculus Rift.
One of the lyrics in that section of the song, it says, "Just look up there and there will be blue skies. Don't need a weather app to tell you that. Subscription to this cloud is free."
Ah,
So,
very clever.
oh, Zachary Levi. So yeah, I think that's all the news I had. Did you have anything else?
No, that's pretty much it. Yeah, the stuff I see is usually on Twitter, and I forget about it by now. But I should start writing it down throughout the week.
Yeah, start copying and pasting it into the show notes.
I know, man. I put a ton of shit on Twitter, man. If you guys don't do Twitter, I mean, I don't blame you. It sucks. But even if you don't, you should come and follow us or whatever. I am not a social media guy. I'm sorry, but I put a lot of stuff up on there. Like one is about gender switching in video games. and there was kind of a study about it. Like guys who play girls and girls who play guys.
Oh yeah, I
And,
saw that. The
yeah.
like apparently way more guys cross gender play than girls do.
Yeah, yeah, and then how they behave, like, do they behave more feminine, or those sorts of questions that make you kind
Yeah,
of
like
curious?
their dialogue would be more feminine, but was it the way they moved was more masculine?
Behavior, yeah, which I feel like is probably a matter of ignorance, but maybe not. Anyway, but yeah, go check it out. There's that. I talked about ADHD, like stimulant training and things like that. Like a lot of psychology stuff. And David, sometime I think you, well, at some point might jump on there and kind of throw some stuff on too.
Oh
But
yeah, that's a thing I should be doing.
yeah, it's just social media, man.
Uh, at Twitter, getting
Yeah.
getting connected.
But it's cool, man. Like, yeah, it's come check it out. I put a lot of fun stuff up there, and then maybe at some point in the future, if we can get our shit together, we'll be a little better on it. But anyway, cool.
All right, so let's move on to game experiences.
Gaming experiences. Man, we got really sidetracked in the news section. We are running on time here.
Yeah, well, I mean that's kind of like the appeal for this part of the program is like we give you the news, but you can get that on your news feed on Google if you want. Like we just have conversations sometimes, and those can be interesting too.
Yeah, it's just like any other podcast, really, except for like the really like sciencey ones, I guess. But like if you listen to like The Angry Chicken is one I listen to. I used to listen to Starcast, that kind of thing. It's just a lot of talking about things, people's opinions and stuff. And that's what we're doing.
Mm.
If you want our academic stuff, that's in the second portion of the show. Although we do bring up academic stuff here too occasionally, but it's less focused on that.
Right.
But
It's more
yeah.
just our opinions for the most part.
Yeah, this is kind of a community thing. So gaming experiences. What have you been doing?
Well, I just finished The Walking Dead episode 3. Have you gotten to play that yet?
No.
All right, so season 2, episode 3 came out, and like Wolf Among Us, it's better. Like I don't know, it's gotten kind of mixed reviews to poor reviews. I've been reading like what people thought of it, but I liked it. It was a little bit more like Clementine getting to become a badass, like just kind of. You know how when you're playing a Telltale games, like you kind of choose what kind of character you're going to be. Like, am I going to be Lee, the remorseful murderer? Or am I going to be Lee, the cold-blooded killer?
Yeah, yeah.
So like with Clementine, I'm trying to think of like everything that happened in season 1, and I'm trying to be like, okay, well, she is going to be messed up after everything she went through, and she knows that she's responsible for Lee dying and like all this other stuff. She's old enough now to appreciate that. So I've been playing her kind of as like a really cold-blooded like little kid, like like just really jaded with things. 'Cause she's seen everyone she knows like has gotten killed, or almost everyone she knows. So like there's some cool moments in episode 3 where you really get to play that up. You have the option to be like to go either path, like go the more charitable, like there's still good in humanity, or go the like jaded, like I've seen too much, I'm too young to be this jaded, but I am.
Yeah.
And so it really lets you play with those choices in episode 3. So without going to spoilers, since
That's cool.
That's kind of what I took away from it.
I remember you pointed out like that seems to be somewhat formulaic, because that's what happened in Wolf Among Us too. Yeah, it's sort of like this. First one you introduce the characters and start building intrigue. The second one's kind of a lull, like in most trilogies.
Yeah, just kind of laying out all the
complexities,
more backstory and stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of like watching the first couple episodes of almost any new show. You're kind of just like getting used to characters, because like if something monumental happens to those characters, it doesn't matter because you have nothing invested in them emotionally. So it's building that part. But 3 ends up being usually a really good episode.
Yeah, where things come together.
That was a good observation. It's like you have some kind of credentials for this. I don't know. It's weird.
Weird. It's like I went to some school for this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Some kind of grad school. Now, another great highlight from episode 3 is she gets a fugly jacket that's just awesome. It's got a rainbow on it, and she just wears that all over the place. So.
That's great.
Yeah, because it's a post-apocalyptic world. You can't be choosy about what jacket you're going to wear. It's a little kid jacket. You're wearing it. So,
yeah.
You know how like her cap was like her signature clothing article from the season 1? Like I think this time it's gonna be that jacket.
Dad jacket.
Dad jacket though.
Amazing. I want to play this. Cool. Yeah. Me. What have I been playing? Or have you been playing anything else?
Bravely Default. Just lots of Bravely Default forever.
Man, I'm so jealous. I play that game so badly. Oh, also I got the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game for the 3DS. For Elijah, but it's part of a behavior plan, so he has to complete something, and I allowed him to capture it because I'm just trying to teach him how to do a behavior plan right now, right?
Mm.
So like, give yourself a reward. So that in and of itself, that process takes practice. So that's what I was doing. I was like, so you select what you want, like, and we talked about values a little bit, like what do you want out of life, like what are the important things you want people to talk about you behind your
Typical
back.
5-year-old conversations.
Very typical, yeah. He's 6 now, so he can handle it.
Well, never mind.
Oh yeah. Now he's ready. He's balancing his own checkbook. No, but the values part, what do you want out of life? And one of the things was, he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, okay, what kind of things, what kind of people do you look up to? And, what are some characteristics about them? And eventually, his was very counterintuitive. He wanted to do 20 push-ups and 20 jumping jacks every day after school.
Okay.
So that was it. I was like, really? He's like, yeah. I was like, okay. I mean, what does that get? What's that in service of? What's that getting you?
Become Batman.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like, like superhero type stuff. And I was like, well, that makes sense, yeah. And physical health is really good for you. Like, it actually is good for your mental activity too.
Mm-hmm.
So, so he ended up choosing that. And unfortunately, he kind of biffed it on one day and totally missed it. And I was like, oh, well, that's a lesson you need to learn, right? I can't just forgive him for that, because that is the point of building that skill, is to fail a few times and then kind of figure out how to fix that. So I still want to play it. It's just sitting there in its package, and I'm like, it's the worst thing to use as a reinforcer, because I want to play it too.
So wait, when does he get to open it? Like, how many? Does it go like a week without missing a day, or what?
Well, we did 2 weeks, yeah, because I told him that I'd be able to help him throughout the weeks by reminding him, and then weekend you have to do it, but he kind of slipped on a day, so because I reminded him, he said, oh, I'll do it later, and I was like, okay, all right, well, are you sure? Yeah, all right. And then, like, he didn't do it, and then I was like, see, so we missed yesterday, so what did we learn? Oh, well, sometimes we shouldn't put it off. Yeah, it's kind of like you need to think of the time of day and then stick to it. He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. And these are valuable life lessons.
You should write a strategy guide for parenting.
Like actually, Amy and I were talking about starting a podcast based on parenting.
Yeah, these are some good tips for people who have progeny.
Yeah, there's not that psychology is useful, but it's totally useful here.
Wait, understanding how humans think is useful in certain situations?
And you know how it is, like, talking to people who are, like, impervious to science, like, that happens a lot, like, in, like, mommy circles. And not that dads aren't, bad about this, too, but they're just less vocal.
This whole, it's, like, there's, like, folk science and pseudoscience that gets passed around via Facebook or blogs.
Like, essential oils is one of them?
Essential oils, gluten, like, the whole
gluten. And the whole time I was like, guys, settle down. The gluten thing's not a big deal. And everyone's like, shut up, science. And I was like, look at this study. It sucks. And I was like, you're just saying that. I'm like, okay. And then the same guys who made the gluten sensitivity thing actually showed that it wasn't a thing. They're like, oh, we did actual science this time. It controls for all the variables that, I don't know, I said were important. And because I was like, I don't know, I'm pretty good with psychology, guys, and I'm pretty sure this is a psychological effect. You guys totally didn't control for any of that. So when they did, and they used a double-blind study, guess what? Absolutely not a thing. And more importantly, all
you're
the
saying that the food that has been the literal breadbasket of our human species for thousands of years actually isn't killing us?
Yeah, as it turns out. And as it turns out, celiac disease is pretty rare. And those are the only people that it actually affects. And that's a real thing. But
right, of course it is. But every kid's gluten-free these days. And I'm like,
oh my God.
You're all celiophilia. You're all what's the
celiac disease?
Oh, yeah, someone who has it.
No.
Well, you're all that. Like,
well, why do you think that's happening? Like, why do they think that's a thing?
Well, people do feel bad sometimes. I mean, there's a lot of, like, sometimes you just eat something and you just feel kind of sick, and then you get this, like, outside, you read on your mommy blog that, like, oh yeah, it's gluten. Gluten's really bad for you. It's like, that's true. Every time I eat gluten, I feel bad. That might be an unrelated thing to the gluten, but because gluten's in everything, like, we eat a lot of grain products.
Yeah.
Then you don't even have to know what gluten is. In fact, most of them don't, right? Like, they're just like, oh, it's in bread. So, like, they just connect, like, oh, and you know what? I did eat some toast yesterday, and I did feel bad the next day. Like, it just seems like it's like saying that Facebook causes violence, right? Like, everybody's on Facebook, so it's easy to point that out.
Right.
Like, oh, that kid,
the base rate problem.
That kid, everybody eats bread. It's on the bottom of the food pyramid. It's very common, and so it's easy to make that connection. Like, I feel bad, and I ate bread. Oh, I probably have that gluten thing that I heard about on the news or saw on Oprah.
Right, and as it turns out, like, that's exactly what happened. They did a double-blind study, and so one of the times they said, like, hey, you're getting gluten stuff this time, and the other time said, yeah, you're not. And then that did not correlate with them actually getting the gluten diet or not getting it. And they did a high, medium, and low gluten diet, and they just told them, like, randomly. Sometimes they identified it correctly, sometimes they didn't, and it turns out the only positive predictor was, were they told there was gluten in there?
Right.
And the actual gluten diet had nothing to do with it. And the reason why it works is because psychology. Like they're like, oh, well, this is going to affect me, and then it does. And not only is it psychosomatic, what we call it, which means that the state of mental your mental state, I guess, is correlate or can affect your body. Like like
Right.
times where you tell someone, hey, you got food poisoning, and they're like, oh my god, I do, and then they'll lay down in bed, and then they actually think they have a fever, and they actually think they're sick, and we're like, I'm just kidding, man, you totally don't. But because you're an expert and you told them that, they
Mhm.
believe that it's true, and it turns true because you start overemphasizing certain symptoms, and you also can make your body kind of partly sick. It's amazing.
Right.
It's a
Right.
whole
Yeah.
portion of disorders called somatoform disorders, one of which is IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. That can be manifest that way. There are other reasons why you might have diarrhea, but
Mhm.
IBS is very characteristic of a somatoform disorder. But anyway, yeah, so some of it's just too much attention, misappropriation of that attention, and then other parts
False
of it is,
cause, and some of it's just
yeah,
psychosomatic.
yep,
Yeah, I just was skeptical of it just because, like, I know celiac disease is a real thing, but it shouldn't be that common. Like, basically what they're saying is that there was a mutation that only affected children of this previous generation of parents who are like rich enough to afford to watch like Oprah and like read these mommy blogs, like, because you don't see a bunch of like poor kids with this thing. It's usually upper like or middle class to upper class white kids. Who,
yeah,
like, so it's like a very specifically demographically targeted mutation that just affected everybody at once over the past couple of years.
right. And
And yeah,
the people, yeah, exactly. The whole movement. Usually people who start being skeptics, I found, and I don't know if this is true psychologically, so I'm taking off my psychology hat here. Um, I feel like it's from people who've been burned a few times. They bought into something, and they were proven wrong and felt really stupid. Did it again, proven wrong, felt really stupid, and eventually they're like, I don't want to be the stupid guy anymore. So they start being skeptic,
hmm
and so like a lot of these people are like haven't been burned enough yet, I think, maybe because they just buy into it because it makes sense, and it's our human nature to have confirmation bias.
right.
So you have to battle against it, folks. So there's not a bunch of cynics, the people who are being skeptical. It's more about looking at it objectively and pretending like it was the first time you ever heard of it and it wasn't a social craze. Like, would you be like, oh, this is totally a thing? Like, examine it objectively. Anyway,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, again, a little off topic, but parenting, it's hard.
it is, yeah. Oh, gaming experiences. Holy crap! I was playing Child of Light.
Speaking of, yeah, that's what we were trying to get into. Child of Light. Speaking of parenting and children,
That
now
game.
I saw you streaming it, and can I just say the music, beautiful.
Yeah. Oh man. Like, what an experience. If you practice mindfulness and you become mindful with that game, it's an incredible experience. If you don't, it's still cool. Like,
Yeah, that's a game where I would turn off my podcast and just focus on it. Like it's
oh
very
yeah.
artistic.
Yeah, you can go listen to the soundtrack on YouTube. I would suggest that you don't because it adds to the experience
hmm
of the game, and it's only $15, and it's by Ubisoft Montreal, which is a great gaming company with a long history, who's
hmm
dabbling in this kind of indie feel. And I just feel like they nailed it. I loved that game.
Oh yeah, they've Beyond Good and Evil came from that studio, and it's another one of
Yeah.
the like very artsy games that sometimes they just treat themselves like they make a lot of like AAA titles and make a lot of money with like Rayman or Assassin's Creed stuff like that,
Yeah.
and then they go, you know what, let's just have some fun now, and they just do something fun like Child of Light.
Yeah. That game, dude. I suggest. I don't know. I effing loved it. But
Now
yeah.
I've been waiting because I want to buy it like really bad, but I told myself like you need to stop buying games and not playing them because I just see them on sale and I start buying things.
Yeah.
So I told myself you can buy Child of Light when you finish Bravely Default. So I've been holding off on that, and then hopefully maybe it'll go on summer sale and I'll benefit from that. But would you say $15 is a good price to pay for it?
Well, definitely. It wouldn't be like a $60 game. It wouldn't be like a $40 game. 30, I might even pay 30. 15 is amazing, and especially I think for most people, I might have liked it more maybe because I love like the music, and some people that may not be their shtick. Also, I love really artistic motifs, and I love that sort of like experiences you can have with them. So that was really nice. And also, I read it depends on what you read into it, and I won't give any spoilers, but there's some ambiguity involved. And so how you interpret it, I think, is completely the thing. Because when it finished, I had to set down the controller and I just sat there for a minute and thought, huh. And then the interpretation I have is really cool, I think, to
So
me.
kind of like a Mark of the Ninja kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, nowhere near that epicness. It's more like okay, what do you make of all these weird plot pieces? Is this something big? Is this really simple? What is this?
Okay.
Kind of thing. It's not like those, jeez, like Mark of the Ninja. I actually paused it and I was just like, oh my god,
Right.
like before the end, before I decided kind of where to go with this story. But it's a really cool experience, and people ripped on it because it rhymes. The whole thing rhymes,
Hmm.
but the whole story
Well, it's supposed to be like
is
a
whimsical.
a 19th century fairy tale dream kind of theme.
Exactly,
So
and
like
there's
that's like it seems like a rhyme is a good thematic choice in that context.
definitely, and people were like, "Oh, it gets old," and I was like, "I don't think it does." I mean, I think that's a personal thing. I don't think that's an objective thing you should rate the video game on. I would say for me, it got old, but I can see it being enduring for other people.
Mm.
I don't know. I think it was an amazing game. The game was amazing, and that's coming from a guy who normally loves male power fantasy games. Like I play all the God of Wars. Like those are
Yeah.
awesome. Love them. Ripping
Gears of War.
people's heads off. Gears of War, yeah, I
Anything with
love. It's
war.
like real life war. Did that too. Super fun. But I like shooting guns. I love it. But it's about a little girl that's not power fantasy, and it's still amazing. It's charming. It's just charming. Just play it. And and the battles combat or the
Wait, so you
combat
don't
is really fun.
fantasize about being an Austrian princess?
Sometimes, but those years are behind me, and
All right.
I sold all my dresses. So.
Whew. I thought that was just me. I was feeling like a weirdo for a minute.
Wait, you don't want to be a tiny girl?
Flying
But-
around in a dreamland with a sword? Actually,
Uh,
that sounds cool. Yes, I do. I do want to be that.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. But yeah, so it depends on what you make of it. A lot of the reviews kind of say you can tell they were just like, I don't understand why these things were here, and I'm like, what? Well, because it's a dream state. Are you kidding me? Like, and they explicitly said that. That's not even an interpretation you need to make.
Well, a problem with the professional review sites, like game review companies, is that they just get their editors get a pile of games, get through these games in a week. They'll Child of Light, and they'll have 5 other games that came out that week, and they don't really get a chance to just immerse themselves and play at a leisurely pace. They got to get through 5 games in a week, and so they're just rushing through it. They're not doing any end game stuff. They're not doing they're not looking for all the knickknacks and finding all the hidden diaries or whatever. They're just trying to get a review out. So a lot of these games that require you to just kind of experience it and just kind of take a moment and smell the roses. Like that Fez game was the same concept, right? He just wanted you to just enjoy being in that world.
Yeah.
They're gonna skew towards lower reviews because the people playing them aren't in that mindset for the professional reviewers.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what amateurs like us can bring to the table. We're not getting paid for this. We're just doing it because we enjoy the game, and we can kind of experience the game the way a gamer is supposed to feel it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, we are not given games.
We're
Handed
not
games to
given-
review.
Although this one was a free game for you because your cousin's awesome, but it's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
like she was paying you to review it.
No, yeah, she's just really cool. But I thought it was amazing. Great game. Also, obviously been playing Hearthstone, but you guys all know that. Still going strong with that game. It's fun.
Yeah, I picked it up again after a month or 2 month hiatus where I just got burned out on it, and yeah, it's pretty fun. Playing against you, I realized something.
What?
You were really good at building decks.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, first of all, you've got really good cards because you've been playing for a long time, and then you've got really
right.
good deck building as well. So it's a lethal combination.
Ah, yes, I studied under you.
Yeah, but I don't have a very good decks because I lost interest before. You know that fine tuning stage where you have to go and
Yes.
meticulously take things out. That's where I lose interest. So my decks kind of suck. So when we were doing the draft decks that we were playing, I was doing pretty well on that because it was just about pick one of 3 cards and go. So your strategy, your strategic advantage was diminished a little bit because you didn't have those very good decks to play with. But
Right.
it was a little bit more even. But when we were playing with your decks even taking to the arena, those were some not the arena, the ranked play. Those were some good decks.
Yeah.
I was blown away.
There are a lot of weird.
I was like, why do I have a 20/20 creature fighting me on turn 3? What's happening?
Yeah, those are so weird. Yeah, those decks are fun, but like you said, it's all that fine tuning. It's like evolution, basically. I mean, that's fine tuning.
Well, if you believe in that.
Yeah, or even if you don't believe in macro evolution, but you believe in micro evolution.
I believe in kinds. Things have to stay within kinds.
Yeah, it was how species exist, right? That's literally just a naming process. There's no magical boundary except that you can't have intercourse between the two, but over time you can.
There are different kinds.
Okay.
It's the
Yeah.
Ken Ham school of science.
Different kinds. Yeah.
But
So
yeah,
yeah,
that was fun.
gaming experience is Child of Light. Pretty much what I did most of the time, and I streamed it. A lot of it was really good. It's fun,
Yeah,
and I
check
like
out
to stream more.
our stream channel and you can see some of that child light. Warning, it will make you want to go buy it, so don't do it if you don't have 15 bucks to spare.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's all. Pretty much game experience I had.
All right, well, I think that'll do it for this section of the episode. Should we move into our in-depth analysis?
Yeah, let's do it. All right, welcome back. This is the in-depth analysis portion of episode 38, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and it's the Teenage Mutant Ninja podcast. Lol.
Lol. So yes, we are turtle powering it up this week. This is a great franchise for video games. There have been a lot of stinkers and there have been a lot of fun ones. So let's just start out there. What is your favorite Ninja Turtle game?
Why did you do that to me?
I like to ambush you.
I don't know. I mean, immediately the one that came to mind, I'll go with that, without having like really considered all the options, is kind of that old school, maybe the one where you could play.
All the good
Ninja
ones are old
Turtles.
school. Be
Yeah,
specific.
that's a good point. Ninja Turtles, the arcade game, where you had the
Okay.
four-person cabinet.
The very first one with the one that became Ninja Turtles 2 on the NES when they ported it.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
good choice.
I used to go to this place called.
In the burning building, and you're trying to rescue April.
Yeah. I used to go to this place called Wonderland, and Wonderland was an
That's
arcade.
wonderful.
It was oddly, yeah, counterintuitively, it was wonderful. But yeah, it's and what you do is my dad and stepmom would drop me off with like it was like $10. I can't imagine how awesome this would be as a parent. And drop me off like $10, and what they do is they have a little nickel thing. Each of the games was a nickel. Yeah, and I would just get like 200 nickels, and I would just play for hours.
Yeah, they had one like that in the college town I went to in Provo, Nickelcade. You just go and everything was a nickel.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, and I remember the big ones though were 25 cents. Rampage. That's when Rampage came out.
Oh yeah.
Remember that game? And it had a big old. Did you ever see the arcade box for that?
Yes.
Oh, how cool is that?
So big.
Yeah, and next to it, they with the promo ones, apparently a few of them had like the actual Lizzie the Lizard or whatever, and then the monkey guy Eddie the Lizard, whoever the monkey guy was, and he's like standing next to it, and they're like holding the box. Oh my god! And that one was a quarter.
Yeah.
So that
But
sucked.
that one you got to eat your friends, so.
Yeah, and it sucked because you rarely got another kid that would like play that with you, because they usually do it like for me. They drop me off and go watch a movie or something, and it was like, how did they do this back then? We were just kids.
I know, like, this was a simpler time.
I know, and I would walk out the front door. It's not like I couldn't leave. I just walk out and just stand and wait for them. That's
Yeah.
weird, dude. Anyway,
you wouldn't just drop your kid off someplace and then be like, "I'm going to see a movie. Pick you up in a couple hours." See
yeah.
Elijah.
Sometimes like we had lunch too. What the fuck? Like, oh my god, I would not do that. But well, I'm a little anxious. My dad's much more easygoing, or he was. So yeah, so Wonderland. Anyway, yeah, probably that game was there, and I remember playing it and loved it. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that arcade box game, and there's almost always other people playing it. So you jump right in, you start tossing in nickels or quarters nowadays, and man, that was fun.
All right, now this is going to be another one of those situations where we always agree on everything, but what was your favorite Ninja Turtle to play and favorite Ninja Turtle period?
Oh, that depends on the game. Do you mean
Okay.
in that game or
Yeah, in that game.
I mean Michelangelo. He's my favorite.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. Mine too.
Why is he our favorite?
I'm going to go into that later on with the different personality types and the tropes involved, but
Spoiler.
yeah, he was a party dude. Let's just leave it at that.
He was. Yep, cowabunga. Well,
Plus, nunchucks are cool. Let's just be honest. Like,
nunchucks are rad. This is coming right off the back of like the Bruce Lee craze, where that guy could do incredible things with nunchucks.
right, like for just like a simple gardening threshing tool, like they're pretty awesome.
Yeah, and it was the only that and the bow were the only two weapons that they could actually use them correctly in the cartoons.
Mhm.
Because like Leonardo can't just if they were bots, for the ones they were bots, they could slice right through them.
Yeah,
But
but
in, like, the
they
movies
couldn't
and
show.
stuff-
There was a like the FCC had like rules where they couldn't show certain things. In fact, if you watch like season 5 of the cartoon, like they took away Michelangelo's nunchucks and gave him a grappling hook
Yeah,
because
so
nunchucks
weird.
were were considered a gang weapon in Britain, and so they wanted to give him something that was less gang related, and they gave him a grappling hook.
It was so stupid. I mean, it was cool as like a weapon, but not to take away his nunchucks. I was like, where's
Yeah.
his
No,
nunchuck?
it was stupid as a weapon. It was like a rope. He like never got to use it except to like tie people up with, and
Yeah,
oh, sucked.
super lame. But yeah, Michelangelo was awesome. He was the super fun one. But as it turns out, there's a lot of people who like a lot of the different ones. I've met people later on in life, now, and I ask them, like about Ninja Turtles, because Ninja Turtles are coming back up.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, they're making a comeback.
Yeah, they kind of died off in around 2007 or so when that card.
Yeah.
Remember that animated film you had me watch?
Yeah, I'll go into that too, a little bit of the history, but they're definitely like something that our kids can start enjoying.
Yeah, so now that it's coming back, like I've noticed that I've been able to talk to more people about it, and there's some people who are like, "No, dude, Raph was totally the best one ever." I mean, look at him; he was a BA.
Well, that was my
he had-
brother's favorite. Like, it was great because I was always Michelangelo, he was always Raphael, and so Christmas and birthdays were so easy for my parents. It's just like, get them a Michelangelo and a Raphael, they're happy. All those little action figures and stuff.
Oh, and God forbid you have the same one and be like at the arcade.
Oh.
These kids, man, like I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna be Michelangelo," and they're like, "I'm already playing Michelangelo. You can be Donatello." I was like, "Oh, I'll be Donatello. You stupid."
He's a
And then,
nerd!
Yeah, you're a nerd. Shut up. And then we fight because it's a violent video game. No, we fight because we're kids all alone in an arcade.
With no parental supervision.
I know. But please, yes, Ninja Turtles clearly the reason. But
Right.
yes, content. Everyone's obsessed with content. No one looks at process. Like what the function is of what's going on, not necessarily like what tell me about the stimulus. Like, okay, yeah, enough about that. That's not that important. Your engagement with the stimulus is what's important. Yeah.
So, least favorite Ninja Turtle game?
Well, I don't know. What about you? I'll think about that.
All right, for my favorite, I have to go with Ninja Turtles: Turtles in Time for the Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
And the arcade. Now, the arcade one had the song Pizza Power at the beginning. Okay, so do you remember when they did the Coming Out of Their Shells tour?
Yeah.
I don't know what happened, but Ninja Turtles craze, for anyone that wasn't a kid in the 90s, Ninja Turtles got so big, at some point in the 90s, they were on Oprah wearing denim jackets, because it was the early 90s, and singing songs. They became a touring group. You could go see these, like, they were like, what's something you bring your kids to see now, like the Wuggles or...
Oh, yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it was something like that, but it was Ninja Turtles. It was called the Coming Out of Their Shells tour, and their I guess their single, like their main song was Pizza Power, Pizza Power, flying saucers of delight, Pizza Power, it makes you feel all right. I still remember the chorus. So that would play on the arcade game. I remember the bowling alley where that used to play a lot, and they also brought it out for the Super Nintendo. And this was the one that had like the weird digitized voices, like Manhattan, 3 a.m.
Yeah. All right.
And you start off on a bridge, you fight Baxter Stockman. That one was my favorite because it had like the kind of Mode 7 graphics where you could throw foot soldiers into Shredder from the Shredder point of view, where he's like attacking you, and time travel and just stupidness, but it's so much fun. Any side-scrolling beat 'em up co-op is gonna be a lot of fun. And you put Turtles on top of that, and it's just gonna be awesome.
Yeah, that was a
Although
great game.
many friendships would end with this argument. Dude, why'd you just get the pizza? You were barely hurt.
Yep.
Yeah, whatever, man. I have fewer lives than you. Yeah, but I've got like 2 hits left, dude. That could have been a lot of life for me. Shut up, man.
Yeah.
Just fight.
Yeah.
Guess which person I was in that skit.
Yeah. No, me too. I'm always overly generous, like with my pro-sociality.
Uh-huh.
So I'd be like, yeah, you go ahead and take it, man. They're like, oh, you sure only got like 4 bars missing? I'm like, I've literally got 1 left, but you go ahead. And then I would die, and I'm like, dang it, man. But yeah. I hated those people. I hated those people that would just start running
Pizza
for
Hawks?
it. Yeah. And you're like, dude, you got like 5 minutes. You got half health. Come on, I've got none. And they're not looking at your pizza bar. They're just being selfish assholes.
They just see pizza, and they're like, pizza time!
Yeah, it's like the people in D&D who like always play strikers.
Yeah.
Like
no matter
that's
what.
you, folks. You're there just to like be like, I'm a superstar, and
I do a lot of damage. Yeah, but there's other roles that need filled. Fuck you. You play those roles. All
Yeah,
right. I guess
someone
I'll be
will sort it
the
out.
again.
that's my learning history. Someone else deals with it.
Yep.
Great. And then the people who like play like leaders and like guardians and stuff end up being the people who watch everyone's life bars and stuff, and they're like, oh, here's the tactical situation. Here's what's
the
going
most
on.
ideal situation for the group. Now, for I was gonna say Turtles Tournament Fire. You ever play that one on the Super Nintendo?
Yeah.
Only because that was one of the 3 fighting games where I entered a Blockbuster tournament when I was a kid, Blockbuster Video. Okay, kids who weren't kids in the 90s, there used to be things called video rentals where you would go to a store and rent a video game. And they all went out of business because of the internet, but they hosted a video game tournament. And one of the games, it was NBA Jam Tournament Edition, it was Clay Fighter Tournament Edition, and it was Turtles Tournament Fighter. And I remember getting really good with Michelangelo on that one.
Sweet. I only played that one time at a sleepover at a friend's house. Patrick Van Ash, I think was his name. Anyway, I played it at his house, and he just trashed me. So I was like, let's play another game, because like he beat me like 17 times in a row, and I was like, yeah, I don't. He wasn't one of those kids that like help you get better, or he does, but he also trashes you the whole time.
That one had a lot of weird like characters from the comics that weren't in the cartoon, like the shark guy.
Yeah,
like
he's awesome.
And Shredder's daughter.
Oh yeah.
He was in there, and yeah, so good times. Although my least favorite Ninja Turtle game, and this might be a little controversial too, because I love the music from it, but the Ninja Turtles for the 1989 Nintendo Entertainment System.
Oh yeah, holy cow!
That platformer, and it was so hard. Like the last boss, Shredder, he had a gun that would just kill you in one hit. It was like an anti-mutagen gun that would just turn you into a little turtle and you'd be dead.
I could never get past the Technodrome.
Oh yeah, and a lot of people had trouble with the seaweed level, the dam.
Yes.
But I was pretty good at that one. But I would get lost because I was a little kid. You know, like this came out in 1989. I was 6, and so like I would get lost a lot in the where you get the turtle van and you have missiles and you're driving around on the overhead map and you're blowing up barricades with your missiles. I'd always run out of missiles. Like I'd get to a barricade and I don't have a missile for it, and I'd end up looking for one and just getting killed.
Yep, I remember that level.
You lose Donatello and you lose Leonardo and you're just stuck with Raphael and he just sucks in that game.
Yep.
Yeah, so that game was frustrating, but the music was fun. Bum 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 bum. It had nothing to do with the Turtles, like the cartoon at all. I remember being really confused.
Yeah, man, I don't think I was like old enough to be confused. I was just like, whatever, Turtle's sweet. So like I played the game because my mom didn't realize that she was like basically buying me the juvenile equivalent of an Iron Maiden. Like buying me that game, it's just torture. Every time you engage in it, it's never comfortable. You're never like, this is great.
That was kind of most games back then.
That's true.
Like, what was she going to give you? Ninja Gaiden, Marble Madness, Double Dragon?
My son is
hard games.
He's 6 right now, and I think I was 7 when I played it, or it might have been 6. I think we're about the same age, you and I, but I can't imagine putting that game in front of him right now. He'd be so pissed. Like, I mean, or he wouldn't be pissed. He would just be like, this game is super hard. Because, like, games now are kind of like a little more better.
A little more forgiving.
Yeah, I would say more well-designed, but I don't know if that was, maybe those games, they knew they were hard, and they're like, F you.
Well, yeah, I remember most of these games were designed to eat your quarters, so they were supposed to be hard.
Yeah. But, yeah, that might be the worst game. I've got a lot of nostalgia around that game, but I was going to say the one for the Game Boy, but I think that's because I played it a bunch, and when I did play it, we were traveling in this van, and my sister kept throwing up. So, like, it might have been just context. Because I remember, like, I don't want to turn this on because the little light, I had that little thing that went over the Game Boy. Did you have that? Magnification?
Yeah, the little, like, magnifying glass with a light on the bottom of it. My sister had one of those for a Pokemon game.
Those are sweet, man. So I had one of those I got for Christmas, and I put it over there and just play it, and it would wake my sister up. Sometimes she'd throw up. So I'd be like, I don't want to play a freaking game. It's a throw-up game, I guess.
Throw-up game. Oh, and I remember the first time I got grounded was at my birthday party when we rented Ninja Turtles 3.
Yeah. Oh, that was a good game.
Yeah, and I had Garrett over, and he was like, dude, we should play. We're supposed to be in bed. And I was like, no, we're supposed to be in bed. Like, I'd never disobeyed. I was, like, the most obedient kid. Like, and he's like, no, come on, let's just play. I'm like, oh, this is a really fun game. And in my mind, I'm justifying, like, oh, we only have for 2 days, so we should play it right now, even though we're supposed to be in bed, because we gotta bring it back tomorrow. And so, like, I'm just getting my money's worth. And, yeah, my mom woke up while we were doing that, and she was, like, she way overreacted because I'd never disobeyed before. And this is like 3rd grade, and she's like, "What? You're grounded! You're grounded!" I'm like, "Whoa!" I remember being like blown away because I'd never been grounded before. It was a traumatic experience.
Man, I guess so. Yeah, Garrett, man. Even nowadays, he's probably still a bad influence. That guy, man.
So yeah,
that's fun. The only bad memories I have around is the throw-up game, and then also how the arcade. When I play that, and somebody, man, I saw people just go to war. These children were like carving out small pieces of land around the Donatello or the Leonardo one. Like, this is my character.
Putting up
Don't you touch it.
defensive embankments.
Kids like urinating on themselves to maintain their position because like that game was really fun and it was really colorful. Like the box for it, the arcade box. And so everybody would stand in line sometimes, and you didn't want to leave, so you just keep pumping your nickels in there. At the time it was nickels, and yeah, like it was a. I remember that being like it was more of a I don't know, like it's not just like one of the games you walk up and oh, I'll try this game, plug it in. No, it was like you had a strategy for like staying there and playing. It was amazing. So those are the only two unpleasant like memories I have.
So let's talk about the Ninja Turtles for people who did not grow up in the 80s or 90s.
Yeah.
So this all comes from a joke in 1983, shortly after we were born. Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird were just like these starving artists in Massachusetts, and Eastman, just as a joke, drew a turtle on his hind legs wearing a mask with nunchucks, and he just wrote Ninja Turtle on it, and Laird like laughed and drew like a more refined version of the turtle, and then Eastman's like, oh yeah, well what about this? And he drew like 3 more turtles, and he gave them each like a ninja weapon, and then they just made that into a little sketch, and that became like they just sold that sketch at auction a couple of years ago for $71,700.
Oh my gosh.
They originally had Japanese names, but it wasn't working, so they gave them Renaissance artists instead, and it was just quirky enough to work. And they first showed up in the Daredevil comics, Daredevil #1.
Really?
Yeah, Matt Murdock sees a truck barreling down an old man, so he knocks the guy out of the way. This truck swerves. A canister flies out the back of the truck, hits Murdock in the face, and the radiation in that canister gives him his superpowers.
Ah.
But where'd that canister go?
Down into the sewers?
And that's where the Turtles came from. Same origin story.
Wow.
Yeah. So they have you ever read the old comics? I used to get them from the Baxter County Public Library when I was a kid because I was like,
yeah,
oh,
those
turtles!
were
I love turtles.
Sure, though.
Yeah, they were a little gritty. They were a lot gritty. They all had like red masks, I think, in that one, but they were they'd kill people and stuff.
Oh yeah.
But so what happened was that it wasn't really made for kids. They actually sliced up people with their swords instead of robots. Like they weren't robot foot soldiers; they were just evil ninjas.
Right.
They'd use curse words and stuff. But they wanted to make action figures in 1986, and the whole like PG-13 attitude of the comics wasn't going to fit with the like 4 to 8 year old target audience for the action figures.
Right.
And then they also this was back in the 80s where every toy got its own cartoon, and so they decided to make an animated cartoon to sell the toys. And And so instead of damn, they'd say like turtle power or cowabunga, and they would become like wisecracking jokers obsessed with pizza, and Shredder became like a typical bumbling cartoon villain instead of like, and the Foot Clan were robots now, so you couldn't complain about them attacking them, and they all got different like they got their letters on their belts and like different colors so the kids could tell them apart, instead of just all wearing red masks.
Yeah. And well, yeah, but you say that it got a little less gritty, but do you remember how big of a deal it was in our small lives?
Yeah, the movie.
Raphael said, "Damn." That's all he said.
He lost his side and shouted, "Damn." Well, the movie was more influenced by the comics than the cartoon. That's why
it was darker.
He got to say that. But they interviewed Laird about his opinion on that because when they sold the rights to it, when they let them do that, they kind of lost a lot of creative input. And he says he would have done things very differently. He says, among other things, there would likely have been no moronic henchmen like Bebop and Rocksteady. The Shredder would have been seriously malevolent. April would not have been a reporter and constantly need to be rescued by the Turtles. The Turtles would not have been so ridiculously obsessed with pizza. And the Shredder would have not had as one of his businesses a restaurant called Ninja Pizza. And the show would not have had a joke or gag every 5 seconds.
Dude, yeah, but back then, like, for some reason, every like main character had to have like some food that they were obsessed with. Like in the 90s.
Like Sonic had chili dogs.
Yeah. The Turtles had pizza. Mario and some of the old Mario, like that live action type thing. He would, he loved pasta, obviously, because they're racist.
Italian stereotypes, yeah.
Super racist. But they always are like, "I can't get away at home and eat my pasta or my fettuccine." Or I think it was just just spaghetti meatballs. But anyway. It just seemed like everybody had something they ate back then, and it was just like that defined them as a character.
Now, one cool thing about the cartoons, though, was that voice actors, they had some pretty like interesting voice acting choices. Like Raphael was played by Rob Paulson, who was the voice for Pinky and Yakko Warner on Animaniacs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's done a lot of different animated characters. He's got a big IMDb page. Michelangelo later voiced the Tick, which is another indie comic that went mainstream. Like the Tick.
Whoa, what?
Yep, that was Michelangelo Townsend Coleman. And the guy that did Leonardo was like a big anime voice dubber, and Donatello was Barry Gordon, who was in a lot of like '90s like sitcoms. But I think the one we'll all know and appreciate was James Avery from
James Avery.
yeah, the Fresh Prince of Bel Air. The uncle was the Shredder.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So then they had the action figures. Those were huge. And then they did the movies, like the 1991, the Turtles movie,
Oh
and
yeah.
then Turtles 2,
Right.
and Secret of the Ooze. Remember, that's where they introduced the Toka and Raza as
Yeah,
villains,
and Vanilla Ice.
and Vanilla Ice Ice Baby with the Go Ninja, Go Ninja, Go, Go,
Oh,
Go.
I lost my fucking mind when that song came on. I was like,
Oh
oh, it's
yeah.
like a sweet, catchy song with the Ninja Turtles and they're on stage and
You ever see a turtle get down and they're like breakdancing and stuff?
oh my gosh.
Oh,
And
that was like a thing back then. Like any superhero movie in the '90s and '80s, they're gonna have some kind of like pop or rap or rock artist like join in for like a ballad that's gonna play during the credits usually.
yeah.
Kissed by a rose on like every single uh, superhero movie they used to do that. And so Ninja Rap from Vanilla Ice was Turtles
Well,
2.
but they just did that in Amazing Spider-Man 2. It ended and it was this rap song, so you never know.
Yeah, and they had Macy Gray in the old Spider-Man franchise doing that.
Good lord, what a mistake all of culture made. I told them too. I was like, Macy Gray's awful, guys. And they're like, no, she's good.
She's gonna be around forever. I try to say goodbye and I choke.
Oh god. Now I want to walk away and now again. Oh, I hated that girl. I was like, no, she's just grating. And they're like, no. And I'm like, you're clearly the victim of a social like.
I know, and then they put her in 2 Spider-Man movies. Like, way to date the franchise. We'll never be able to watch that and not know that it was like early 2000s.
Yeah, yeah. It's like Crocs. Like you just can't separate that from its time.
We're gonna all look back on that and say like that happened and we allowed that to happen as a culture. We're all like responsible. Never again.
F you, not me. I told people from the very beginning. I was like, no, she's just awful.
Oh yeah, I did too. But as a culture, we are culpable.
True, true. It's like Alanis Morissette. She came along, and I was like, she sounds weird, but I think it's kind of catchy. I think she's gonna stand like the test of time as far as like being charming later on in life. And one of her songs came on the other day on like the '90s station when I had like X radio or something in one of our vehicles, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, I could listen to this. But like Macy Gray, you put that on right now?
No,
No,
never.
just like I did back in the '90s. Turn that shit off.
So bad. Now we'll probably have to put the Ninja Rap somewhere in one of our drafts because it's just great. But then they did Turtles 3 in 1993, and that was pretty much a failure. It's the one where they went back in time to like the ancient samurai days.
Yeah.
Not that great. And then there was nothing Turtles related for a while, and then as far as movies go, but it came back to Nickelodeon, and what was it? There was like the 2003 to 2009 show that was more influenced by the comics because it had Peter Laird as a co-creator, so he made it more comic booky.
Well, and before that though, I think the thing that helped usher the Ninja Turtles out is the thing that started applying to the grades underneath us, like the generation just after us, was Power Rangers.
Yeah.
They started making this huge explosion.
They made karate interesting to kids again.
Yeah, exactly. Like, because I remember getting into fights with like underclassmen of me, because they started bringing in these things. I'm like, those are lame, dude. Look, Ninja Turtles. And I'm like, those are turtles. That's stupid. I'm like, you guys don't even move. Their mouths don't even move. Shut up. I used to get in serious fights over that. Like, very angry.
And yeah, they even made a Power Ranger kind of Turtles clone video games. Like there was one for the Super Nintendo that was basically a Turtles game, but you could turn to a Power Ranger halfway through each level. Start as just a teenager. But yeah, they had the 2000. Did you see that series, the 2003 to 2009? It was on Cartoon Network, I think.
I don't think so.
It was pretty good. It was a little bit more like the comics, a little grittier. And then Viacom picked them up, and that was in 2009 after the series ended, and they're part of Nickelodeon, like a subsidiary. And they started the new CGI cartoon that's in its 2nd season now, and it is quite a hit. It's usually ranked in the top 5 animated shows for kids of the age group 2 to 11. So
that's a great show.
It's a pretty big deal. I actually saw an episode when I was in France last time. I was just flipping the channels, and I was like, oh, French Ninja Turtles. Nice. That was my first episode from that series to see. But they also made a 2007 movie that I assumed you saw, but apparently you hadn't seen until just recently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you think of that? It was like a computer animated one with Patrick Stewart.
Yeah, enough said. Yeah, that was awesome, and it was like very. It was much more like, I don't know, for an older group. It wasn't like the hey Cowabunga, oh I bumped my head again.
Oh, totally tubular.
And this, yeah, it was cool. It was cool. It wasn't as good as the current like animated series, but it was, and because mostly because it didn't have any of the iconic bad guys. It was like this immortal guy, and this bad guy.
Yeah.
But it was Patrick Stewart, so that's
Yeah,
awesome.
it was cool. And Kyrie and the Foot Clan were kind of cool. They were all ninja.
Yeah.
And so that was fun. And then the next movie is going to come out this year, live action film by Michael Bay.
Michael Bay.
Fans were not happy when the trailer released, but Michael Bay's response was simply, quote, take a chill pill, unquote.
Michael Bay, he literally never grew up from grade school.
I know, he's just like, you know what? You know who's hot? Megan Fox. I'm going to put her in my movies forever. So she's April O'Neil. I don't know. What do you think? Have you seen the trailer?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Well, I saw a teaser. I don't know if I saw like a full trailer, but I'm gonna watch it, obviously. But I know that it's a Michael Bay film, so it's gonna be just like Transformers, a huge disappointment. But still, I'd still watch Transformers if I had never seen it. Knowing what I know now, I would still watch it because you gotta
at
watch
least
it.
the first one.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I'd watch the second one. You just gotta know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
If someone was like, "It's terrible," but watch it because Transformers, dude, that's our childhood.
Yeah. I
think
definitely.
like that.
I didn't hate the first one. It was very nostalgic for me having the original voice of Optimus Prime back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's how I feel about this one. Like, it'll be nostalgic. Like, it won't be terrible. I'll watch it. People are really complaining that they look like Shrek. Like, the turtles look weird. They have like weird human kind of faces.
I'm cool with artistic interpretation. I'm not worried about it.
I'm fine. I mean, I grew up watching the horrible '90s cartoon that was just a terrible adaptation from the comics. So I think I'll be okay.
Yeah, right. Not too concerned.
Cool.
Yeah.
So that's a brief history of Turtles for all of you novices to the world of all things Teenage Mutant and Ninja.
Yes, indeed. So video games, the games were, I don't know, all different levels. When I think of the typical Ninja Turtle game, what do you think about it?
My typical Ninja Turtle game is a side-scrolling beat-'em-up, like Double Dragon or Final Fight kind of style, with two-player co-op.
Yeah, me too. Or even 4-player. For some reason, I keep thinking 4-player.
The arcades had 4-player, and the GameCube port had a 4-player one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and didn't they remake the old one now to have 4 players, like the Turtles? I think Turtles in Time or something.
Yeah, you can play those 4-player. Like that's how they're meant to be played, right? You got 4 turtles.
Yeah, of course, totally. So, yeah, those kind of games. I think, those games, like as far as like if I should go into my psychology bit, I guess. The psychology portion is about
psychology time with Jeremiah Bean.
Hi, sit back. This won't be awkward.
Welcome to NPR, where we talk very softly with soft voices.
Yeah. I think this brought to mind this thing of old school video games in general. It operates on this like social psychology idea, and we'll have to. Part of the meta conversation, anytime I bring up something social psychology, I think will be like you and I determining if it's a real thing. If social psychology is really bad. But this one does seem to ring true. I haven't really put it into like a bigger framework yet or a smaller framework. Everything with social psychology I feel like needs to be worked with before it's anywhere near useful. So this one I'm not sure whether I should, bump it up into a larger hierarchy or something else that makes sense, or tear it down and be like, no, it's actually just this. Because it's rarely right where it needs to be. Anyway, good. And I don't know if I've explained this, but social psychology, the reason why is because it's a lot of people got into social psychology after like starting sociology, which isn't a science. Sorry, sociology people. I mean, I guess it kind of, okay, it's a science, but it's like, it makes, the whole deal with sociology is this. You study people on a whole. Well, there's a lot of stuff going on. Even in psychology, watching one person and explaining his or her behavior, very complex, right? Mm-hmm. So imagine taking a whole area full of like culture and everything else, and then measuring it on some group of variables.
That human element, that variable of humanity, is hard to measure than say like physics, Newtonian physics.
Right. There's just so much going on, which makes sense if you believe in behaviorism, because it's a small. Every single decision is a small like either reinforcement or punishment for something, and so with that, with the vast array of behaviors we have, the outcome is you can't really explain it through like one principle, right? Like, do they approach or do they avoid that thing? I don't know. It depends on their learning history. Let's take a look.
Right.
That kind of thing. Well, so that's a mark up for behaviors, a mark down for people who like to put people in groups. Because social psychology typically will have they'll say, hey, look, this people do this. And I'm like, people do that, and then you look at their methodologies and you go, first of all, your methodology is not great. Second of all, your interpretations of it not great. Third of all, your statistics that barely had any effect at all on people. And they're like, well, 350 people didn't do it, but 353 did. And I'm like, oh, come on. Yeah, statistically significant, but that's not interesting. You can't make an inference. You can't look at Grandma Joe across the street and say, well, she's probably going to do this because relativity theory or something, it's not helpful to me. And they're really I think social psychology is full of people trying to get tenure because they come up with new names and then they find a really shitty finding for it and then say, hey, there you go. Now, yeah.
Right, and that's kind of how literature is too. It's why there's always a debate about whether to put social psychology in humanities with literary theory or in the sciences with biology. And part of that is because science to me, and I think to you too, one of my definitions, is the science, is it predictive? Does it have predictive abilities? And if you're just making what you always call just so stories, where you're oh, and this is why that happened, then it's not that helpful as a science. It's more of a commentary, like a literary thing, which is what I did, but it's not science.
Right. Yeah, like anthropology, really. I mean, we do a lot of digging up and then saying a just so story, and I don't really like that. I like the stuff that's predictive. Where we'll be in 30 years, and if they make a positive prediction that way, then I'm like, wow, you really do understand anthropods. Great. Right. Instead of hey, we dug this up, and here's why we think that's the case, and then later it's yeah, it's not the case. Sorry, it's not. I want prediction and control, and that's what behaviorism changes from the rest of a lot of other psychology. It's explanatory and it offers control.
Yeah, we got in a big argument when you first got into grad school for psychology, because I was like, oh, good, a soft science. You're like, no, it's a real science. But really, we were arguing terms because I was thinking psychology and you were thinking behaviorism psychology, and I was thinking of the whole field. And so now that we understand our terms, I'm like, oh yeah, you're definitely doing science.
Sure, yeah, and more importantly, psychology in general is making this turn. Most programs, there are different programs. Some still teach shit like the Rorschach, which isn't a thing. We know it's not a thing.
Cool superhero, though.
Yeah, cool superhero, exactly. So social psychology is still in that past era. Their power is waning, but unfortunately, the media doesn't know that, so they usually interview a social psychologist because they have a lot of cool stories. It's like, oh, that's a cool story. Yeah, I could see how that could be true. And I'm like, that's literally confirmation bias, sir. You should know what that's doing because you've got a PhD in knowing what that is. So, anyway, it's absurd. Whereas, it's not interesting anymore unless it has prediction. Yeah, prediction is a big part in psychology in general, but control is almost unique to behaviorism. They say, that's fine, I don't care, it's still a fancy story, and yeah, it's predictive, that's okay. But a correlation is predictive. Hot weather and rape, incidences of rape, those are correlated. People wear less clothes, the explanation that I think makes sense is, but I don't know if this is really the cause, is that people wear less clothing, so maybe the people want to do that. And also frustration goes up when temperature goes up. Okay, it's a little agitation, right? And then you just want to get a quick fix to your problem. That makes some sense.
Maybe when you would normally take no for an answer, you're just so pissed off by everything else going on that you don't want to take no for an answer because that's one more disappointment in your day because it's really hot outside.
Yeah, exactly. There's another one. There's no prediction because the effect size is so small. It's not 50% more rape. Or 50% of the people are raping. Not that we should
like a cereal now with 50% more rape.
Yeah, exactly. Not good. I wouldn't want that cereal. But for this, obviously we want to do whatever we can to stop any rape and all rape. Yes, definitely. But I just meant that. So maybe I shouldn't have said rape. Maybe that's a hot topic. I could say something like
violence or theft or anything. But basically, what you're saying, long story short, is that we're a little skeptical about social science, social psychology.
Yeah, exactly, because of this, because of these sorts of things. But here's what they say. They say that humans kind of rely on one thing, and this has to do with Ninja Turtles. You'll see how. I'll tie this in, I promise, folks. Is that competency, autonomy, and relatedness. They say those three things, right, are what humans really want, what we strive for.
What we crave.
Yeah, it's what plants crave. Brondo.
It's got electrolytes.
Electrolytes. Plants love electrolytes. And all their plants die because they feed it to them. That's essentially essential oils to me. But anyway, this competency, autonomy, and relatedness. What they mean is that competency, we want to be displayed as someone who doesn't always is competent. Someone who people look to and say, oh, that person can do this thing or these groups of things very well. We don't need to be competent in all things, but some things we do. yeah, and autonomy is just like it sounds. Like we don't need a bunch of people helping us. It's not like, hey, I need to make breakfast. Will someone, like help move my legs and walk up to the front, that kind of thing. It's like, no, I'll get a wheelchair, and that way I can do it on my own. And I
Right.
can
We
have
developed that pretty early on, right? Like, I'm a big boy. I can do it by myself. That phase we go through as toddlers.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Autonomy. Oh my gosh, my smallest son, he's 3. He doesn't. He's a huge autonomy guy, man. Like stuff that he should not be doing. He's like, I want to cut the chicken. I'm like, first of all, raw chicken, no. Second of all, that's a sharp blade. That's a Ginsu type knife. No. And he's like, I want to do it, please. It just crushes his world if I don't let him do it. And then I have to explain it to him. Then I have to make sure I'm gentle, because poor guy, he just wants to be a man, right?
Yes.
But I guess a human, not man, but
The Homo sapien.
yeah, just a human. Autonomy. Lastly is relatedness, which that part's kind of that social function. Because if you cut someone off from a social group, we become pretty sad. There's this idea. Okay, what do you think about? Is this okay if we go off on a tangent? Hope it's okay. If we
This hasn't stopped us so far today.
Yeah, good point. What do you think about introverts and extroverts? That idea.
Oh, man. We talked about that a little bit last week, I think.
Before you get into, I'll give a little history.
All right.
Carl Jung was one of the guys who really popularized this.
Okay. So it's bullshit.
Yeah, Carl Jung is a psychoanalytic. He trained under Freud for a while. They had a kind of a disjointing. They had a falling out.
Let me just put it this way: Carl Jung is used more legitimately in literature classes now than in psychology.
Yeah, no one. Well, I mean, there are still. That's the thing about psychology. It's advanced so far in the last like 30 or 40 years that anyone who trained 30 years ago is a complete neophyte to anything now. Like they don't even know what's going on. They're like, wait, what? And I'm like, yeah, it's called. Never mind. Like, and they're like, I thought this had to do with dream analysis. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, get out of our field now. Like, it's those guys are still around. Like we go to conferences because you have to have CEUs, continuing education credits. And at this last one, the APA president was there, and she said, let me just get an idea of in the room, who here considers themselves a scientist practitioner? Raise your hand. Who considers themselves a behavior therapist? Okay. Cognitive behavior therapist? Okay. Purely cognitive therapist? Okay. How about, and then she named a couple other ones, experiential, existential, blah, blah, blah. And she said, like more kind of weird ones. And then she goes, and who considers themselves a psychodynamic, which is psychoanalytic, or it's Freudian. And like 20 people out of a room of like 100-something, 150 or so, raised their hand, and I was like, oh my god, and they were all old people, sitting in the front.
Yeah, but it'd be like going to a medical conference, and then like 30 people in the room are like, yeah, we believe in humors and phlegm and leeches. Yeah. We're big into leeches. If you have a disease, we will bleed it out of you. And you're like, why are you still in our field? Go back to school.
It's exactly. That's a great analogy because some of that is works, right? Because of placebo effect, one. Two, it's because it's like, oh, that's an ass-backwards way to get about it. But I guess, yeah, bleeding the person out will make them tired. They'll lay down and fall asleep. They'll be more hungry and thirsty. Okay, yeah, those are things you want to do when you're sick. But that's actually kind of harmful in a way, and you definitely don't want to do that on a general basis because it would be generally harmful.
Where we still use leeches in medicine, but not all the time.
Yeah, and it's an ass-backwards way to get them to just lie down and drink water. That's what you're supposed to do when you get the flu, yeah, if you drain their blood, they'll be too tired to even stand up. So, I mean, and it's harmful. Why don't we just cut out that harmful part, drain their blood and just have them lay down and just drink? That's like psychology right now is like, we understand that, okay, just have them lie down and drink, but all these old people are like, yeah, let's get the idea of like having them lay down and blah, blah, blah. Now, here's the other tricky thing is these old people are also still department chairs. Right. That's a little freaky.
Yeah, they're at the top of their career path because they're old. They've had time to work their way to the top.
Yeah, and psychology is self-correcting science, just as any science. But you as a school decide what faculty comes in, right? The department chair and the current faculty get a vote on that. You see how that could kind of get a
slow down the
Yeah, exactly. So like you still get schools that are like that, and they're horrifying. We go out for internship, or you interview at a school that you applied to, and they're like, so tell me about what you know about dream analysis. And I'm like, oh, I'm done here. I'm ready to go. I don't even want to be here. Like
internship is over. Thank you.
Yeah, I will not take this position. I can't stand being under this for a year. Nope. Like I don't want you guys to even succeed. So like there are people who will kowtow to that. They'll say like, all right, I'll do it. Fine, whatever gets me an internship and lets me get out. It's only a year. I shouldn't be, because it's really hard to get an internship. So, there's that camp. But I kind of just, what am I going to get out of that? Like, I don't, No, and I can't stand them being like making interpretations and telling people, and people are like need help, and they're looking at them like, help me, my kid is running away or whatever, my
I
kid
know.
just
It's
shot someone.
it's just palm reading. Like it's cold
Yeah,
reading, and it's telling them what they want to hear, and
yeah, and
yeah,
palm reading works off of a principle, self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
right.
So it's kind of, it's like, oh, that's one way to go about treating that, I guess. Yeah, it's
And it
just
also works off the
lie to them.
principle of the person being conned wants the con to succeed. Like
Yeah.
they want it to be real because that's why they're paying for it and asking for advice. Same thing with the people go to psychoanalytics. It's just like, oh yeah, so then I had this dream that I was the Incredible Hulk. Oh, it's because you have a lot of pent up rage. Well, you're an authority figure, so I'm gonna start thinking of ways where I do have pent up rage. Oh, look, I found some.
Yep, yep. And it's all about interpretation. People don't understand ourselves very well. None of us do. I certainly didn't before I got into psychology, and there's still parts of me where I'm like, I discover every day. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess so. That's true. It's weird. I
Mhm.
guess I am doing this. But yeah. So people just take their advice, and the most tragic part about that is because you're right. They do want it to be true. They're really seeking help, and those sort of patients, I can tell you, aren't always the norm. Like if you work in community mental health, where they have to be there because they got court ordered,
Mhm.
or they got in trouble for exposing themselves to someone like that. Like
Sure.
those people don't
Pee-wee
want to
Herman.
be. Yeah, exactly. He probably got court ordered therapy as well, and so they get thrown into those systems. And what's bad about those systems is they pay the least, and so they get most of the junk people, the people who are just in it to make money, or because you can make money off mental health. I don't know if that's a secret or not. You can. Um,
Weird.
yeah,
A
yeah. So,
medical field that pays well. That's weird. I should have
and
known
if
that.
you've got an audience that's going to come back, whether you're working correctly or not, like you're actually having any effect or not, that's exactly where you want to get shitheads. Right?
Right.
So, like, not saying that everyone in community mental health is shitheads. My wife works in a community mental health setting right now, and she's amazing. But it's just that she has to work against the system to be effective. True story.
Right.
There's times where she's like, I'm doing this, and it's actually not making me need near as much money as I could. And that's
Mm.
not good. So, anyway,
So
huge tangent.
extroverts and introverts.
Yeah. Okay. So introverts and extroverts. That has to do with this relatedness principle of the competence, autonomy, and relatedness. And the
So
relatedness.
the basic thing about extroverts and introverts is that extroverts get energy by feeding off of crowds and being around people, and introverts lose energy doing that, and they get energy being by themselves, right? Like that's kind of like
Yeah.
the
What does that mean?
pop psychology interpretation. And I don't know because they're always like, "Are you an introvert or an extrovert? Take this personality test." And I'll look at the questions. I'm like, sometimes I like to be around people. Sometimes I like to be alone. Like I
Yeah.
think most humans are that way.
Let me ask you this then, because this should help clear this up maybe. Um, let's say you take a huge test,
Hmm.
okay, like, or you had that big old oral exam to get your master's, right?
Right.
Like studying for that and then doing it. After you were done, how did you feel?
Relieved and happy.
Relieved and happy. Good, good. Was there any part of that you felt like, like a little like drained, or can you think of an experience where like you felt like, oh man, that was, a lot. I'm glad it's over because it was draining. You wouldn't want to do that 8 hours a day every day,
Right.
maybe?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I just felt like, oh god, I just want to eat, drink a milkshake, and watch Adventure Time because that was a big
Exactly.
thing.
And we're relieved because it's an aversive state, right? You don't
Mhm.
want to be there forever, and that's why you get relieved. You feel relieved when you're leaving like a something you love, like a party or something. I don't know. Yeah, and so that's the trick. The thing with social anxious people, or extroverts as we call them, or introverts, sorry, is they analyze. Anytime you get someone in your room, like a therapy room, I guess you don't have a therapy room, but anytime you get them in there, I was going to say, ask them, like if they're socially anxious, say, what's going on in your head? And they're like, oh man, a lot of things. They're analyzing a lot of variables. They're thinkers, right?
Mhm.
Introverts are actually considered thinkers a lot of the times, and vice versa. A lot of people generalize that too. They say, if you're a thinker, you're an introvert. I'm like, no, not necessarily. But yeah, so what happens is they analyze each situation. Each one is a test, essentially. And and you remember we actually made these a test sometimes to people
Yeah.
because we're horrible people.
Yeah, in high school, we
Yeah,
had no ethics committee on our psychological experiments.
yeah, we didn't understand. We were doing the best of what we had. It's just like parents, nowadays. You can do something horrible for your kid on accident, and you're the most well-meaning parent in the world. It's not your fault. It's just
It's
that you
true.
didn't have this language, or you didn't know exactly what was going on. So
Camus
that's what's
said
going on.
that the evil in this world comes largely from ignorance, and that good intentions can be just as harmful as bad if done without comprehension.
Oh yeah, that's true. Is that from the actual book, David, or is there a movie on it that you're quoting from?
That's from the movie Troy.
Yeah, Brad Pitt said that, Jeremiah. That wasn't an alien.
We got an email about that.
It sucked. Yeah, he was just like, which book is that from again? I was like, shut up.
It's
I
like
don't even know if that guy
trolling.
was. I can't tell if he was trolling or not, so I just didn't respond. But I guess I should. Anyway, So like each one is sort of an aversive state because it's like something that doesn't come natural to them. So they have to when you approach something that you don't know, where you can't just automatize. Because if you're an
Uh-huh.
extrovert, everything's automated, right? You just walk in and you're just like, hey, and you just start acting, and
Mm-hmm.
everything you do is positively reinforced.
Mm-hmm.
But you can have someone that's an extrovert turn into an introvert, and vice versa. We do it all the time, the one way, introvert to extroverts. We treat social anxiety all the time, and it works great. It's one of the things we have a lot of great data on, and we know exactly how to do it. So, yeah, and then those people are like, "Oh man, yeah, I'm a whole different person now," and I'm like, "Well, you're not the whole different person now. You can just operate with everything automated, you know. If you
Mm-hmm.
call that a whole different person, whatever." But yeah, you're happier, obviously, and now you can go to these things that you want to do. And so the relatedness principle here is addressing that very thing. It's saying there is no such thing as introverts and extroverts. It's not a real thing. That was Carl Jung, who literally didn't do anything worthwhile. I mean, well, he did at the time, but now we don't hold any of that stuff to be true because
Mm-hmm.
it's just not. And so introverts and extroverts is an iconic. It's a simple way to talk about that, but it's essentially someone who finds an introvert is someone who finds the social like lingering social interaction as
Mm-hmm.
taxing, right? They say they lose energy. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, that just means that you're using up a lot of cognitive resources. It's like a test because you can't just automate and do whatever you want. Those same introverts, quote unquote, do usually have like a one or two friends or a family member or someone that they can act just fine with, and they will report that those interactions are great because
Mm-hmm.
they don't have to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And people who are extroverts can become introverts quite easily in their life too. It's not a personality variable. It's just a descriptor of like how well you perform functionally and socially.
So what they're saying is that we all want, like, nobody just, everybody wants some kind of relatedness, either like a close friend or a family member, somebody. Nobody wants to be an island.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And you'll take it where you can get it. And if you can get it from a
Yeah.
big crowd, yeah, am I right? All right. If you can get it from a big crowd, you're going to like,
Uh,
and then you'll move down the list too. But the more friends we have, it's actually a more protective factor against suicide. And a weird thing is health. If you look in the medical literature,
yeah, you
the
see that a
literature.
lot with those studies with religious people having better health than non-religious people.
Yep.
And when you isolate the fact that religious people have a community they go to every Sunday and like have this like social kind of tapestry to draw from, like it
Yeah.
makes perfect sense. Like that starts to disappear when you look at people who are religious but don't go to church, for example, like people who just are spiritual. Like then they
Right.
don't have that health benefit. So it's not really that like because they say 3 Hail Marys a day that they're living longer. It's because they have this social tapestry to draw from.
Right, which is called the religiosity effect. No, I'm kidding. I didn't put a name on it, so I don't get tenure. That's social
Come on.
psychology. It's
Got
just
it.
an obvious. It's just a principle. Anyway,
See what you
yeah, it's
did there.
operating on a smaller principle. It's just like people want to be social. Like, for example, introverts are more likely to commit suicide. It's like something like 3 times the rate or something. It's
Yeah.
not a healthy way of being, guys. Like whenever you say I'm an introvert, that's how I am. Smile. I'm like, that's good. You've got right now.
You
You've got
see a
some.
lot of that though on Facebook, right? Where they're like, "I'm an introvert. Don't
Yeah.
try and fix me. This is the way I am." And then like they like those tips for interacting with introverts and like
Oh my God.
don't
Yeah.
judge us because we have different values.
Which is okay. So, like for me, I feel like it's kind of like trying to teach a toddler how to do surgery, right? It's way too complicated without like a PhD or a master's or some kind of degree that's an advanced degree that you spend a lot of time understanding what to do when it goes wrong, how to go about doing it right, those kind of things, how to treat those things. So I'm like, that's useful for the layperson. For the layperson who's not going to spend 10 to 12 years of their life studying how that works, that makes sense, Yeah, just be kind to them, like operate, let them behave how they want to and respond to them how they would like to be responded. That makes
Sure.
sense. But that is not true. That's not a true thing, like with a capital T. That's not
Right.
something you
It's
should be
true-
happy
it's
about.
true the way like big is beautiful is true. It's like, well, it's good that you have self-esteem, but it's not healthy to be overweight.
Right, like obese.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, same thing. I'm like, that's not true. Like we all want social things. It's just for you, you've been punished a lot from it. It's been an aversive state, and if you're constantly entering an aversive state, you're going to push away from it and say, I don't want to do that. It's like me with cooking. I used to suck at cooking. I'm pretty good now. Like I made a duck à l'orange, the other day. I just made it up out of nowhere. Like that's because I learned like the principles and stuff, and like and I'm really excited about it. But I used to suck. But the reason why I never got good until later in life is because I was constantly punished. I would make something and it was bad, and people would give me like, oh, that's very good. They'd fake happy, which is the same thing that's happening in social situations for these people, and you sense that, that they're faking,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, oh, this is just a lot of work and it's not working. This sucks. I'm gonna call myself a plebeplarn, and guys, this is how you interact with plebeparns. And you're like, well, actually, no, that's actually a predictor for a lot of bad things like suicide and whatnot. But if you're not gonna get professional help, don't bother messing with it because you could get even more suicidal.
Yeah,
Or you
try and fix it.
yeah, just don't let it. It's like someone who gets a house of cards somehow working. Your kids do, and like they use a bunch of tape, and you're just like, yeah, you know what? Let's just leave that like that. Okay? 'Cause
Right.
there's some very serious repercussions for returning. So when I say this, it's purely academic. I don't mean go tell every introvert that they're stupid, but you
Or
could
that they
encourage
need-
them.
Yeah.
But if you do want to tell them, do tell them. Go seek a professional for this who understands how to do this correctly, because this is one of the easiest things to treat for us, and we change people's lives all the time. They're like, I don't want to be an extrovert, quote unquote. Literally 3 weeks later, they're like, oh man, this is the greatest thing ever. I can't believe I was missing this out. And I'm like, yep, that's like 100% of the cases. Like it's not that I've experienced at least. So it's a great thing to do, and it's very liberating. Anyway, how this has to do with Ninja Turtles? Because there's 4 of them, right?
Yeah.
And that's the relatedness principle. It's calling bullshit on Carl Jung, which everybody does nowadays. So the competency, autonomy, and relatedness. The relatedness is about it's operating on that principle by doing a co-op setting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Ninja Turtles in general, like they're brothers, and they play off of each other through like small, I'll use the P word, personality traits.
Mm-hmm.
Which, in other words, just ways that they interact is functionally helpful.
Mhm.
Like Leonardo counterbalances.
Donatello does machines.
Yeah, and I think you're gonna probably talk more about this, but their personalities or
Mhm.
the way their habits, their social habits, I'll say, because I hate the word personalities. Their social habits are kind of beneficial. They found like this is really fascinating for like social psychology, like real social psychology, because you find 4 people that don't operate well by themselves. Like the movies and the cartoon is a lot about one of them going off by themselves and not doing so well, right?
Mhm.
But as a group, they're actually more functional, because they play
Yeah.
off of each other.
There's synergy. The whole is better than the sum of the parts.
Yeah, kind of Gestalt idea, right?
Right.
Yeah, like that. And that's interesting from a social psychology point of view, and that has to do with that relatedness variable. Like we as a species are, we're cohabitant. We live in small groups, and so this relatedness makes sense from an evolutionary perspective.
Right.
Or if you don't believe in evolution, I guess you could think of we're created that way, right? To work
God
together.
wanted it that way because He likes us to be friends.
Right. What's the thing Jesus says? What's the thing Jesus says? What I just said.
Oh, that thing Jesus says.
That
Yeah.
thing he's always saying.
Always
No,
the
the body of Christ. He
Right.
uses
Yeah.
that analogy.
We're everybody. The head's important. The legs are important. We're all working together. We're all in it together.
Right. Yeah. We have different roles, but we all work together. So if from a Christian perspective, or if I was speaking to a Christian client, that's how I would say that.
Could you please give it in a Buddhist perspective now?
Actually, no, because they're all about detachment. So, unfortunately. But they like social relatedness, but they keep you at a distance. True Buddhism. I'm not talking about all Buddhists everywhere, but like the old school Buddhism and the proponents of Buddhism nowadays. There's a Buddhist temple by here, by the way, which is really nice.
Weird.
Anyway,
you don't have a Korean restaurant, but you have a Buddhist temple.
I know, right? And it's a big deal. Like it had like a TV show came and looked at it. It's like one of the bigger ones, and maybe it's just they want to be left alone, so they came to Mississippi. Yeah. This is such a weird place.
All right, so we have co-op games which fit perfectly with Ninja Turtles because it's a co-op relatedness world that they live in.
Right, it's operating on that relatedness. That's why, like you said, the true experience of these kind of games is playing with 4 people, or playing
with as many friends as you can find. We've learned from SAG experience it's hard to get 4 friends in a room together, but many people as you can get.
Exactly. So that's that relatedness, right? So we're operating on one principle of like kind of this human striving, or this idea of one social psychology idea of human striving. 2 is autonomy, which has to do with the fact that while you're all playing together, you're clearly going, and the example I thought of in my head was actually exactly what you referenced earlier, which is the pizza.
Uh-huh.
Like, pizza's only for one of you, right? It's not
There's
like
not 4 pizzas.
there's that new game, Heroes of the Storm by Blizzard. Get this, David. Oh my God, they must have listened to our episode. I'm kidding. They made this game long before we put that out. But everything we addressed in there that was shitty and that we said they should do, they're doing. They generalized all experience, so anyone who does anything gets the whole team experience.
Oh,
right?
Brilliant.
That kind of yeah. So that would not be kind of an autonomy per se thing, or it wouldn't be maximizing that. It would be playing on it, because it's not like everyone shares control of one piece of the body, like a transform or like a Voltron or a Power Ranger thing. But instead, it's like you have your own life bar, you fight your own battles, but your friends can help with relatedness, but you're still autonomous,
Right.
And finally, like the competency thing, like how would that come into play here?
Well, just like every video game, with increasing difficulty from each level, and with finding out that you fight better as a team, so there's a little bit of relatedness in there too. But just increasing the challenge.
Yeah, yeah. So already maybe this social psychology idea is starting to break down because like you said, competence is both, through mastery of controls, but
Yeah.
also as a form of
Teamwork.
as a team. Yeah. So it's like, oh, can we really separate these three things? I don't know. Anyway, yeah, yeah. So that has to kind of do with like the fact of like, you've got these difficulties that are coming in, you're learning how to deal with them, and you become more kind of competent. Um, Yeah, so one of the things that has to do with competence, there's been a lot of studies on the frustration in video games,
Hmm.
and one of which has to do, they're operating on these principles of competence, right? That they get you frustrated by doing something that demeans your competence. So they'll crank up the difficulty of a game without telling you, or they'll say like, oh, this is on easy setting. What are you talking about? And they're like, are you sure? And you're like, yeah. Like there's been like 12 guys who've already run through that just aced this, and you're like, you're saying I'm not competent? You're like, yeah, you're incompetent. They don't say those words, but that's the meta communication that's going on is you suck.
Right.
You're not good at this game. You are not competent. And the person plays and plays and plays and practices and never overcomes those obstacles, and they get really pissed. And that's why people rage quit.
Right. It's why people stop playing games. It's why when I play a video game, I'll get to a certain skill cap, and then there's like another plateau to get to the next level, and I'll just be like, this game's no longer fun for me. Like with Hearthstone, I'm like, now I got to put way more effort into this to get better. Nope.
Yeah.
I'm losing now. Like I was joking, we were playing the other day, and it was like the first time I played in like a month or two, and like you just killed me with this. Like you had like what, two legendaries out on the board and like a 20/20 creature, and I was just like, I'm not having fun now forever. Goodbye. And like I just rage quit the game because I didn't feel competent anymore.
Right, right. Which you could again, social psychology kind of sucks, but you could also say it has to do with autonomy because autonomy really is about competence, right?
Right.
But whatever,
Yeah,
whatever.
It's true. It's like those are synonyms. If you're autonomous, it means you can do things competently.
I'm telling you, man. Like, it's bad, isn't it? Like, I'm not the only one here. There's quite a few of us who shit on social psychology, but no, I think the majority of people really respect this crap. And I'm like, oh, come on. But anyway, whatever. So, anyway, yeah. So like, there's been a lot of studies attacking that sort of competence or whatever, and watching how people react. And just as a general rule, you can say people get pretty frustrated. This is clearly something we like to have.
Why do we need studies for that? Like people get frustrated when they suck at things.
I don't know. Well,
Let's
I mean,
test that.
well, there's a lot of. Have you ever heard of a guy named Lilienfeld? Probably not. Why would I
No,
even
I
ask
have
that?
not heard of that.
It's a really stupid thing to say. But
Have
it's like
you
you
ever
saying-
heard of a guy called Henri de Navarre?
Or even if you said some literary critic, probably literally any of them, I'd be like, no. Why would I read that guy's stuff? No.
Yeah, but it's a good way to segue into new topics for the listeners. So who is this
Good
guy?
point. So pretend we didn't just say it. So Lilienfeld,
Yeah.
he's a guy who he works for the APA proper now, and he's a professor. And one of the things he came and gave a talk at one of our what was this, grad school? Yeah, this is grad
APA
school.
being American Psychology Association.
Yeah, sorry about that. APA, sure, American Psychological Association. He talked about why social science is shit on a lot. And one of the things is he talked about this, vagueness between variables. He says like, come on, man, like stop being stupid. And the second one was or no, he had like 11 or something like that. But one of them was the idea of this shit. Where was I going with that?
I don't know.
I just got a. My wife sent me a message and it popped up, and she said she has something in this room and I need to let her in. So, because I've locked her out.
No wives allowed for game theory time.
Yeah, exactly. Damn it, David. What were we talking about? Let's cut this part out. Lilienfeld.
Yeah, vague variables, social psychology.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I kind of forgot, unfortunately.
All right.
But anyway, Lilienfeld. Sorry about that. Let's move on to the next topic, which is, and I'll try to remember that while we're talking. I don't know, what were we talking about right before that? This was a really good one. I didn't want to miss.
Competence, autonomy, relatedness. We tested competence. People got frustrated when they sucked at things, and
Oh yeah, no, yeah, because you said, okay, yeah. Here's the thing. He said we have a lot of social maxims. Is that the right word, maxim?
yeah, just
I
like
don't know.
phrases that we just take at face value as being true.
That's it. Okay, good. Okay, yeah, that thing. We do those a lot, and like one of them is and they tested this to find out why people think like, oh, I already knew that when they read a study, and sometimes it's obviously true, but sometimes it's not. Like they one of them was like they said, we have competing maxims and we don't even realize it, but we draw upon them. And this is what happens in religion too. Is like you find the scripture that matches the thing, and then everyone's like, oh, it's so wise, and therefore the Bible's always right or whatever, or the Quran or whatever you're using. But yeah, really what you're doing is it's called the availability heuristic. You're just pulling up whatever matches what you're saying, and that's what happens here. Like there's competing maxims we have all the time. Like one is absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Or
right?
forgetful, as Maid Marian's handmaiden points out in the Disney Robin Hood.
Yeah. See, and the other maxim that people will quote all the time is
out of sight, out of mind.
There you go. Out of sight, out of mind. And so what we did was, what Lilienfeld, did was he took some people and he showed them these studies. They're fake studies, but he said, hey, here's this study, and we put a bunch of people here, and blah blah blah, and then blah blah blah, and we found that like when people are away, as it turns out, we actually want to be with them more, and that's called absence.
Oh, I see where you were going with that. So when I said, like, why do we need a study for that? If you had given me a study saying, like, when people were bad at things, it motivated them to try harder and keep playing, and I would say, like, that's obviously what would happen, even though that's the opposite result of what the other study said.
Exactly, and that's the thing. We show them that. They said, yeah, of course. And we're like, how useful do you think the study is? They said, not very. Do you think that it's need to be done? No. And what do you think? Like how sure were you that you knew this before? And people would put like upwards of 8, 9, 10 on the study. And then when they did the other side of it, we found out that when people are away, you actually kind of, you make room in your life for more people. It's about the explanation, right, that you make about the data you just found, and you give this convincing explanation, and you say, how do you think about that? And they go, yeah, of course, duh, I can think of examples of that all over the place. And you're like, yeah, okay. So how sure are you? And they're like, oh, very sure. And then at the end, we were like, hey, we were just fucking around. Like, look, these are two completely different things. Here's what people really do. And they're like, oh. And we're like, yeah, no. Did you learn anything from that? And they're like, yeah, I do. I feel kind of like maybe in the future I'll be a little more skeptical. And we're like, good, okay. Mm-hmm. So that's what we want to do moving forward, but that's why so many people see things in psychology, and they're like, oh, I knew that, yeah. And I'm like, did you, though?
Did you?
Of course you think you do because of confirmation bias, but if I, like, and some you do, like, and I should have done a better job at asking you beforehand, saying, like, how do you think these people would act, rather than, like, the after story. But,
right. There's no way to tell now. Did I know? You don't know.
I know. It's like Schrodinger's cat. It's both true and not true.
Exactly. But Schrodinger's hypothesis.
Sure. But anyway, there's something else about Ninja Turtles is when I think back on them, and the reason why I'm going to go watch this movie is because of nostalgia, right?
Yes. Oh my God, have you ever looked back? My brother got me season 4 of the old 90s cartoon on DVD for my birthday once. And I could not watch it. I watched like 3 episodes, and I was like, this is awful. My mother is a saint for ever sitting down and watching this movie, if she ever did. And if she didn't, I don't blame her. Like, I would get out of the room too, because this is just terrible.
This is terrible bad. It really is. Yeah, but we look back on them like fuzzily, right?
Yeah, rose-colored glasses, as they say.
We did, and we did an episode on nostalgia, but I hadn't come across much dealing with that because I was still real heavy in the literature on what specifically had to do with what I was writing. But now I've been able to read more, and there's a cool thing about nostalgia. First of all, how do you feel when you're nostalgic?
Happy, sad would be how I would describe it. Like
happy,
you miss the old times, but you're enjoying reliving that thought, but you're also kind of sad that it's no longer the case.
Okay, yeah. And which one do you, if you had to put like a bunch of negative points for the sad part,
I think overall it's on the positive side.
Okay,
like, it's like bittersweet, where it's something I would still eat, but there's a little bitterness to it.
And my son just learned what bittersweet is. He's been using it all the time. Like, anyway, he goes. I was like, how would you feel, if Daddy played video games all day? Like, what kind of dad do you think I'd be? We were exploring, like working and versus playtime. And he's like, well, that'd be awesome because I get to watch you. And he goes, well, really be bittersweet because then it'd also be missing out on playing other things. And I was like, nice.
So well spoken.
I know, right? Oh, this kid, man, he's awesome. Anyway, yeah, so like they found that nostalgia actually has an overall positive effect on people. And the weird thing is, when do we do it?
Okay, sorry, I got really excited because this is where our fields overlap. You know Proust? Of course you don't know Proust. For the audience, Proust.
Yeah.
He's a French writer, and he's famous for writing about the smell of madeleines. Madeleines are these little pastry, delicious kind of, not quite cookies, they're like doughy, delicious little pastries that you can buy in France. and they have a very vanilla-y smell, like it's got a very distinct smell. And he writes this thing about how the smell of a Madeleine, it instantly transports him back to his childhood where his mother's making them, and it's this whole thing about how smell triggers memory. It's something he
Mm.
was exploring. He wasn't a psychologist, but just something he was exploring as a writer, and it's become a very famous French literary allusion. Whenever you talk about Madeleines or Proust's Madeleines, you're talking about this sense of nostalgia being triggered by something from like a pleasant memory from your childhood going through the olfactory canal right to your brain.
Yeah. Oh, that's so weird. So it smells. Is there any
Yeah.
other times?
Smells, music. Music triggers it a lot.
Yeah. And is there any? Let's say he may not be able to do this just because of confirmation bias, but there'll be times where like I'll smell camping or something,
Mm.
and I'll be like, oh hey, if it's the first time in a long time, that's one factor. Um, yeah, there's other times where it's more likely that nostalgia will kick up, and
Uh-huh.
they found that like when you're in a negative mood, it's more likely to pick up. So like
Okay, so it relies on like how you're already feeling going into it.
yeah, which is why a lot of people are like become cranky old people because it pops up whenever they feel bad, and it makes them feel kind of good, but it also makes them not feel good about the current day, So
Right. That's what I
they're
mean
kind
about
of like
bittersweet, because you feel happy in the memory, but also sad that that memory's gone.
right, and like that it's not there anymore. So you're upset with the current situation, so your mood is down, and then you're
Mm.
more likely to have a nostalgic event where you think back to an idea. It's like when you're playing a video game, and you're like, ugh, what a hand-holding event this was, and you set it down, and you go, I remember when games weren't that way, right?
Right.
So that nostalgia kicks in after a negative experience because it's sort of like a resiliency effect. It's trying to get you back to happy even though the current state sucks,
Mm.
right? And it's that same drive that like we work on in therapy for we call behavioral activation, which just means when you're sad, get up and go do things.
So you think that maybe nostalgia evolved as a way to alleviate kind of bad, negative feelings?
Absolutely, it has a protective effect because when things are bad, we're slightly more likely to like kill ourselves or do something
Or even
stupid.
just get sick, like our immune system actually suffers from
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So your mortality rate goes a little bit more up if you're sad, and the longer it lasts, the longer
So
that
there would
is,
be
right?
some selective pressure for not moping.
Yep. Yeah, and if you can't get up and do something about it, you can at least think back to something nostalgically. So that's pretty cool, right?
Right.
And people who said that they were more nostalgic, like people who endorse more nostalgia, actually have a higher self-esteem, more trust in other people around them, and they're less likely to suffer from depression. So
Okay.
people who end up engaging in nostalgia a lot and have found that skill and have used it a lot, some social psychology people might say personality,
Hmm.
but yeah, so people with a good learning history of this would actually are less likely to have those things. And uh, uh, the two things that are most likely to spawn it is one, negative mood, is what they call negative mood, and two is loneliness. So
Mm.
that has to do with those three things we talked about before: competency, autonomy, and relatedness.
Right.
Because loneliness has to do with relatedness, right?
Hmm.
And the negative mood kind of has to do with, like we said, competency and autonomy are kind of the same thing. So
Right.
like
Just
on
feeling
the
like
other
you're
half of that,
sucking.
right? Yeah, you suck kind of thing. You can't
Okay.
do that.
Interesting.
So
So yeah, that makes sense because I get more nostalgic. Like you're not as nostalgic when you're in the happy memory. Like you're not like, oh man, this is a great memory. I feel nostalgic. But then later on, you're like, oh, I broke up with this girl and I kind of miss the happy times. You're not thinking about the bad times. You're just thinking about the time you were like on the Eiffel Tower or some kind of big like memory evoking thing.
yeah, and it is bittersweet because it's both resilient, but it also contrasts to what you
Mm.
currently have.
Right, which is
But
just soul crushing loneliness.
soul crushing loneliness. But isn't that interesting though that the really two variables we talked about above are like kind of what's going on here and with video
Yeah.
games.
It ties in. And so people who are nostalgic for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or video games are healthier. This is
Yeah,
what I took away from that.
that's what I'm hearing. Good. Signed off, Jeremiah. Almost PhD.
Psychology.
Yeah. Very cool.
Very cool. Indeed.
Yeah. So that's just one of the psychology bits. Another one had to do with personalities, and I think I've distressed my distaste enough about personalities. But
Well,
I
buckle
touched
up
on it.
because that's what I'm all about.
Well, no. I think it's a great descriptor. I just don't like when they say like you said. You said this. I think, and I really like that. You said this, and I didn't have to say it. It wasn't like, oh well, let me introduce a new concept. You already figured this out, which is prediction and control, which personality does not do much
Right.
of, not usefully. So go ahead. Sorry.
Right. Well, okay. So coming out from the literature side, I'm going to take us back to the 90s again to a movie called Cool Runnings.
Yeah, I
Feel
remember
the
that.
rhythm, feel the what is it? Feel the jive. Come on now, it's bobsled time.
Yeah, the Jamaican bobsled team, right?
Yes, this was a pseudo based on a true story. Let's just say that about Jamaica's first bobsled team and the horrible things they had to go through. But I remember watching it, and I noticed something as a kid is that each of the bobsledders wore different colors a lot.
Huh.
There was the funny guy who always wore orange T-shirts. There was the serious guy who always wore blue, like wife beater, kind of like tank tops.
Yeah.
And then there was like the tough guy who wore kind of like a dark orange. And then there was like the quiet guy who wore like a deeper, like it wasn't really purple, but it was like a dark navy blue.
Yeah.
And then I realized John Candy is Master Splinter, and those guys are the Ninja Turtles. Right? There's like the driven guy, Junior, I think was his name, and he was trying to like get into the Olympics. He was like the leader. He was very serious. He was definitely who?
Leonardo.
Right. And then there was like the tall guy. He had a weird name too. I don't remember, but he was kind of the mean tough guy, like the bad boy, very
Yeah.
very rough. Who was he?
Raphael, man.
Yep. And then there was the guy with the dreadlocks. He's like, I got some news you can't believe. Jamaica's got the bobsled team, and he's just a comic relief who was doing like a
Yeah.
pseudo Chris Tucker kind of routine.
Sure.
And who was that?
That's Michelangelo.
Of course it was. And then there was like the kind of quiet nerdy guy who was just kind of there to like balance out the team and be kind of passive.
Yes, yes, Donatello.
And then you had a mentor figure who was trying to raise these kids up to achieve some kind of failure that he was unable to do in his life.
Yeah. Splinter, holy cow, yeah.
Yeah, so I was watching this, I was like, holy cow, it's just a ripoff of the Ninja Turtles. No, turns out this happens a lot, and the ancient Greeks knew about it. They called it the four temperaments, and
Oh.
or the four humors. It was like wacky ancient pseudoscience, but this is how they used to explain personalities and stuff. And they also used it medically too. Like I was saying, they thought that maybe if you had too much blood, it would cause a fever. Too much bile would cause a cough. Too much black bile would cause depression. Too much phlegm caused a cold. Which you could see why they think that, right? Like if you have a cold, you're coughing up a lot of phlegm. Oh, he's
Yeah.
got too much phlegm. But they also thought that a permanent, so those are temporary imbalances. They thought the permanent imbalances of these four things, which is again blood, yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm. A permanent imbalance that leads to these different personalities that we see.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
And so I'm going to just read the different personality types. I won't tell you what they're called, and you tell me which turtle they are.
Okay.
All right, so one of them is extrovert and people-oriented, generally likes socialization, fun crowds, and showcases of people's talents. They're highly opposed to dwelling on the past. They exhibit optimism, compassion, good cheer, a love of fun, and enthusiasm, but on the flip side, they may be impulsive, gullible, self-indulgent, lustful, easily distracted, or sloppy.
Yeah, that's Michelangelo.
Right, and that's called the sanguine temperament, or the blood-based one.
Okay.
Okay, the
Is there
next one.
Was there any
Go ahead.
basis of why they called it blood rather than some other like
They just thought that too much blood caused this kind of personality, and and temporary imbalance of too much blood caused a fever because you would turn red
Oh, yeah, okay.
and you would get warmer, which blood is warm. Like this is like Hippocrates like era. This is a long time ago.
Hmm.
Okay, here's the next one. This person is extrovert and task-oriented. He seeks success and completion of tasks, likes to be in charge of successful projects, exhibits leadership, dominance, ambition, and charisma, is also very tactical. On the flip side, though, highly prideful, easily angered or upset, may show arrogance, narrow-mindedness, obsession, and tends to be somewhat of a bully. Can also be a bit of an anti-hero.
Yeah, Leonardo.
Hmm,
Oh
careful.
no, you're talking. Oh, the bully. Like that would be Raphael.
Yeah, the thing with Leonardo and Raphael is they both wanted to be the leader, but they had different ways of going about it. Raphael is the choleric or yellow bile temperament.
I feel like, and maybe this is where my critique of personality in general, but I feel like there's not that much different between these people. Like I'm like, yeah, you could in the wrong scenario, Leonardo would be Raphael. If Leonardo was not the leader and Raphael was, Raphael wouldn't be showing these antisocial things because he's exactly where he wants to be. How would Leonardo be acting? Maybe more like Raphael. They both want to be leader, and it's just the fact that Raphael is not currently the leader is what maybe makes him so moody. You know?
We explore that dynamic in the 2007 movie. But moving on,
Yeah.
this next person is introverted and task-oriented, very passionate, have high ideals. So he's all about ideals, sense of justice, mainly leadership while following the rules, good manners among the rules. They tend to be chivalrous, um, organized, highly refined, hardworking, though perhaps a little too much. But they, on the negative side, they can be detached, neurotic, obsessively perfectionistic, and have insanely high standards, which can lead to depression.
So almost too good.
Right.
Leonardo.
Leonardo, right? And they tend to blame themselves above other, or tend to blame others, self and all of the above. So like they're just people who like they take it personally if the team isn't doing very well, which we've seen in Leonardo moping about a lot in different stories.
Yeah, yeah. And
And
that
then
comes from the David Drake School of Business, by the way, guys. For when you're interviewing, always
yes,
whenever they say you have a weakness.
make your weakness that you're too awesome at something.
Yeah, dude, I've done this like without thinking about it. But you
What
know
would
where
you say is your biggest weakness?
well, let me see. I mean, sometimes I'm so driven and I work so hard that sometimes I work too hard. You know, I give
Ah,
too much of myself to the project.
I see. Yes, that is a big problem.
Yeah, it satisfies the requirements, but it's not actually saying that. Yeah, you have a weakness.
So the last of these personality types, the phlegmatic or phlegm-based personality, is
Gross.
introvert and people-oriented. They are sometimes referred to as the sweethearts. They dreams and passions of this personality or temperament are to spread kindness, forgiveness, restoration of peace and harmony, but they tend to be docile, timid, or lazy. They tend to also be prone to insecurity, and they're very much often called weak but skilled, the heart of the team, or the peacemakers.
I guess that's Donatello.
Yeah, he's like that's what he was all about. Like he'd always be like patching things up between Raphael and Leonardo. Remember the first Turtles
Sure.
movie?
But he's also not lazy. He's pretty hardworking.
Well,
But, but
lazy in that like when everyone else is working out, he's fiddling on like a communicator or something.
well, it just sounds like he's engaging a different value. But
Yes.
that once again, my
You,
critiques.
you gotta you gotta check your psychology at the door, man. We're in a
Check your privilege, Jeremiah.
we're in a but okay, so basically we tend to see these kind of four group ensembles ever since like ancient Greek theater. They'd use these personality types as they were making their characters, and so we see it in Cool Runnings, we see it in Ninja Turtles, we see it in any movie that has like four people in it. You're gonna see these things, but you also see what's called the five-man band, which is where they take a traditional like rock band and they break them out into teams too, and it's the same kind of thing, but this one adds a chick to it, which would be April O'Neil.
Oh, okay.
So you have like the leader, who's the lead singer. He's the leader of the group, charismatic, level-headed, strong. You have the lancer, the lead guitar. He's usually second in command. Contrast the leader. If the leader's clean and uptight, the lancer's the grizzled anti-hero, or the deadpan snarker. I want to say cool but rude.
Yeah.
There's the smart guy, the keyboardist. He's physically weak but intelligent or clever member. He's often nerdy or awkward, played for comic relief. Sometimes unconventionally young. Sometimes a trickster and a buddy, the big guy. So that would be the Donatello, and then you have the big guy, the drummer. He's the strong man of the team, or dumb, or mute. Yeah, again, that kind of falls apart for Michelangelo, but
And it's interesting that it's a bunch of dudes and one chick.
yeah, the chick. The chick usually is the peacekeeping role to balance off the other members' aggression.
That's a personality type, just being female.
Yeah, it says the chick is often considered the heart of the group. The role is usually played by a woman or girl, someone female. Otherwise, it's not a five-man band. So it's another of these personality groups you'll see a lot. Like
That's pretty sexist.
yes.
Like there are like a bunch of different kinds of guys, and then there's girls. You know, there's just girls.
Right,
Girls
but
are like this.
that's how it was in TV. Like, look at Rescue Rangers. There was like
Yeah.
Gadget, she's the chick, and then there's a bunch of guys. Gargoyles. You know, there was Elisa. I don't know. Like, name any like TV show with five characters, and there's usually like one chick and four dudes.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was thinking about this, and I was like, we tend to kind of make when we do role play. Like, we don't do like heavy role play usually in our role playing games, but sometimes we do. Like in our Ashfar campaign.
Yeah.
We got into the role play a lot, and we tend to kind of gravitate towards this five-man band. Like when we did it, we had the leader Sinfert, right?
Right. Yeah.
And then we had, and this is going to be really interesting for everyone that wasn't in our D&D group, but each of those characters kind of fell into it when I was looking at it, and I was like, that's weird. We kind of like unconsciously kind of, almost to balance out the group, like think of the group in a story or a novel as a character, and then you want it to be well balanced. You want it to have like a working well together, like what we call dynamics of synergy, you know, like
Right.
like you were saying, like the personality is like almost through natural selection, they tend to gravitate together and become a more efficient composite.
Yeah.
And so we see a lot of these 4 or 5 groups, ensembles following the same kind of personality trends.
I wonder if it's that, or if it's those are just the facets of the larger social face. Because like so anyone kind of assumes those roles because that's what you can offer. Like either you can offer like guidance or visionary, like here's where we should go in the future, guys. I got the big picture in my head. That's Leonardo, and anyone could do that. You could do that. I could do that. Tim could do that. Like anyone in our group of friends. Like some of us may be more used to doing it in the past, but like in their groups, like you may be the Leonardo of one group, but you may be the Donatello of another group. I know that's how I am at least. Like I'm the Michelangelo of my family. I'm considered funny and goofy,
Right.
but like they had a hard time respecting
Yeah,
my
so it's not like an
intelligence.
intrinsic personality thing. It's more of a just whichever one we're best at in, like,
Yeah,
whoever has the most strength in that, they step up and do that in a group.
yeah, or even like if there's a niche not filled, if you enter one and like let's say they've already got a visionary, and then I'm like, okay, I won't be the visionary, then I'll be the Donatello, because I'm kind of smart sometimes. Like maybe I could offer my help that way. Or
Yeah.
like, or really, the Raphael is just a dysfunctional. I just think that
Raphael's just a dick.
he's well. The thing is like he has a role, but it's already been taken. He's like, well,
Right.
normally I'm the. He's a little bit fun loving, a little bit. Like occasionally he'll like
Yeah,
goof
he can be a little
around.
snarky.
Yeah, and he's not maybe not the Donatello type, but he could fill the role of Leonardo easily. So
Now it's interesting. People who do these, like look at in literature and they look at pop culture and they look at these personality types. Like depending on how many characters, they each take on more than one role. So it's like what you're saying is like, as the need arises, people kind of specialize. So when you only have a 2-man group, like you'll have people doing multiple things, or when you have a 3-man group, like the classic one is the Star Trek, right? With Shatner, with Spock, with Kirk, and with McCoy. Then you have like that usually is like the 3-man balance of powers, right? You're gonna have the guy who's all logic, you have the guy who's all passion, and you have the guy who's kind of in the middle.
yeah, okay.
And so like I'm just thinking back to all these other cartoon shows beyond Cool Runnings, like all these other things with these Greek temperaments in these four-man things. Like I don't know, name a show that has like 4 people in it.
I was gonna say Power Rangers, but I've never seen one.
Like Alvin and the Chipmunks with Alvin, Simon, Theodore, and Dave. You'll
Yeah,
have the same thing. Like Alvin's choleric, Simon's melancholic, Theodore's sanguine, and Dave's phlegmatic.
but you've got freaking Alvin leads the show there. See, so like leadership, not really. And like Zach Morris, for example, was the Michelangelo. He clearly led their troop.
Mm.
Even though like Jesse Spano, this is for people who haven't seen it, Saved by the Bell, way back in the day. But like I just think I think it's okay. Some of my like hatred for personality is hopefully just or understandable because like imagine you're sitting in a therapy room and you're talking to someone and you start getting like a little bit of wiggle room and they're kind of like yeah because everyone's got self stories. We've all got things we say about ourselves. If I say introduce yourself, that's a self story. You say like oh well I'm Jeremiah. I'm pretty hardworking. I've got a lot of different things I do. I'm smart. I'm fun loving. Like I like to have fun. I like to explore things with people. I like conversations. Like that kind of thing. That's a self story. It's not always true though. Like and that can change. But people get this idea of permanency of these self stories. This is actually one of the parts of ACT. And that is personality essentially. When people talk about personality like that, I get frustrated because they'll say something like, I think that's just the way I am, and I'm like, I don't know what that means. I know what the future is, and I know what the past is. You mean that's how you've acted in the past, but you don't know how you're going to act in the future. This is not a prescription. It's not something you have to do or that you must do in the future. It's personality is a harmful thing for me in therapy because people will they'll fall back on that, and I'm like, that doesn't mean anything. That just means how you've acted in the past, and I'm telling you that's dysfunctional. You're suicidal, dude. It's not working. Like your self story sucks.
Right, yeah. But I'm not giving therapy to these characters. I'm just saying like these characters tend to interact in these ways on these books or TV shows because that just tends to be when we have 4 characters like a Ninja Turtles thing, you're going to have a Joker, you're going to have a leader, you're going to have a tough guy, and you're going to have it's like a boy band almost. It's that formulaic, They've got the Justin Timberlake and the Lance and the the tough guy like who is like the bad boy of NSYNC, like Chris maybe.
Yeah.
There weren't that many bad boys, but like remember how in the 90s all the boy bands had those tropic roles that they all had to fill?
Yeah.
It just kind of happens that way in storytelling. Like we just tend to these 4 personalities together tend to make for interesting stories.
maybe this would be helpful for people, and I'm using the psychology lens for what you're talking about. Maybe this would be helpful for people who are entering new groups. Like, let's say you know what I mean? Like,
Like figuring out which role
what
needs
you should
filled
do.
and jumping
Yeah,
in.
what you should do exactly.
Like,
Like,
oh, they've already got a girl, so I can't join that five-man band.
yeah, maybe they've got like humor and innocence. So you got that guy who reminds you of humanity, Michelangelo, the guy who's always around when we're on our downtime. He's like the star of the show. Or you've got the guy who, when we need shit figured out, we just can't put our heads together. Well, we've got him, and we've got a visionary, but we don't have a disgruntled asshole. I'll be the disgruntled asshole.
Right,
No, I'm
that's
just
the
kidding.
choleric guy. That's Sean in Boy
Raphael.
Meets World.
Yeah, yeah. I don't
Corey
know.
is the phlegmatic. He's and then Topanga's the melancholic. That's the Donatello, and then Eric the sanguine. He's the Michelangelo.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So maybe this would be helpful for people in the future as well.
You're just like, oh, let me see your temperament. See how much phlegm they have, and then you can
Yeah.
know.
Yes, yes. That's
Agents
why.
of Shield still does it too, right? You've got Coulson, he's the phlegmatic one. You've got Ward, the cleric. He's the guy who's kind of Raphael, kind of hothead, tough guy. You
Mhm.
got I guess Sky and Simmons would be kind of more sanguine, more kind of goofy comic relief, and then May and Fitz are more the Donatello kind of melancholic nerd ones. I don't
Yeah.
know. There's it's just an interesting way of like seeing these patterns showing up again and again and again.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. And to me, I'm trying to like think of like what other types you could put in there. I mean, you could double up on roles, obviously, but
Well, yeah, and as the group size changes, there's different motifs, like the 4-man, the 5-man, there's like different ones, and then sometimes they start doubling them up, or they'll combine them. Like the ancient Greeks would even have combination temperaments, which I didn't get into. And this is
right.
again, it's the kind of problem with pseudoscience and personalities. Is like, well, what about if you are sanguine and choleric? Then you're extrovert,
Mhm.
and now you're the artisan. And what about choleric and melancholic? That makes rational, and there's just different kinds that you can do that way. I mean, you can post hoc create categories for everything you see, so it's not incredibly predictive or useful that way, but it is kind of fun. Like, it's a fun thing to do, is like to look at everything that you've been watching, like, and saying, okay, which one's the Michelangelo, which one's the Raphael, because that's easier to remember than like choleric and phlegmatic for me.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. And
But
yeah,
yeah,
that's
the
funny.
turtles
Maybe.
tropes is what I used to call them before I knew that was a thing.
Man, you already had it all figured out.
I did, and then I found out other people were thinking about this too, long before me.
Oh my God, I know. That's the reason when I first got into psychology, I was like, I'm going to become super famous. And they're like, why? What's the psychology thing you figured out? I was like, we're categorically cognizant. Quote unquote, that's what I would say. I was like, that's a fancy way to say basically we like to put things in category.
They're
And then I
like,
think
yeah, we know.
yeah, yeah. And then, like lay people, some of them would be like, oh, that's pretty cool. But then I got in the field and they're like, yeah, that's literally sensory and perception 101. I was like, oh,
Yeah, that was
okay.
me. I was like, I found this Cool Runnings connection. I was like, Cool Runnings is Ninja Turtles. I'm a genius. And then I was like, oh wait, that's literally every 4-person thing. Someone's already come up with that.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, man. Academia crushes your soul. That's the takeaway here, good folks.
It is. It is.
Your childhood dreams are shattered. But anyway, yeah, well, cool. I think we put a lot of thought into this episode for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Of course we did. I was talking to this girl before the show, and I was like, hey, I'm going to be gone for a little while. I'm going to be doing an episode of our podcast. And she's like, what's on? I'm like, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, so it's pretty fucking serious. I got to focus. And she's like, no doubt.
Yeah, that's pretty hilarious. Oh man, well, cool. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Yeah, there's a lot to take away, maybe. One of our
Yes.
better ones, and yeah, we might have more too, but we're kind of on the fence. We're waiting to maybe hear from a guest, so we didn't know which episode we were going to do
So
exactly.
we literally threw this together at the last minute again, but hopefully you learned something.
Yeah, hopefully we can all take away something. And if you guys have anything to contribute as well, throw it on the Facebook page. We've got it's facebook.com/ what is it?
Facebook.com/group/the Game Theory podcast.
Is it groups or group?
Hold on, I'll look it up. While we're doing that, why don't you transition
Yeah.
into feedback?
Sure, sure. And also our Twitter, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I think it might have been in the other section. Check us out at twitter.com/gametheorypod. I post a lot of stuff on there. I don't post a lot of stuff. I'm not as active as most Twitters, I think, but I put on some pretty cool stuff, studies, things like that might help you get through the week. And yeah, so it's pretty good.
All right, so I'm going to give you the webpage as an old man would. https:// no, I'm just kidding. So it's facebook.com/groups/Game Theory Podcast. We'll get
Is
you
it groups or group?
groups with a plural.
Okay.
So
But there you go.
groups and then Game Theory Podcast, one word, and that'll take
Yeah.
you to our Facebook page.
Come join in on the discussion. There's a lot of fun stuff, and people throw up stuff all the time that is video game related. It's a fun little community, man. I really like it. I love when things pop up on there. I always go look.
Yeah, it's good
So,
times.
Cool. Well, I guess that can transition us into the feedback section.
Yes, feedback.
Okay, this is the feedback section. Where we talk about our interactions with the community.
This is our chance to turn our little dialogue into a what's it called when you're talking to a lot of people?
Yeah, conference
conversation.
Call. Yeah, is that how you say it?
A conversation? I don't know. I'm more into monologuing.
That's why people like us, because we are so smart.
Yes. So we got to number 50 on our iTunes reviews. Big day for us.
Sweet. Well, let me see. I'll pull it up here.
Right. And I'll pull up our email. We got an email this week as well. I'll go ahead and read that. It comes from Ramirez, and he says, "Hi guys, I recently finished episode 35, part 2 of the Game Theory podcast, wherein you read my iTunes review. Remember me? I'm Feral Hound. I mentioned Metal Gear. It's okay if you don't." Yeah, someone did mention Metal Gear, and we felt sad that I knew not much about it, and you knew more than I did. So he says, what I really want to talk about is the She Got Game video series. Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
After listening to your comments and considering your many points on the topic, I decided to go check it out myself, so I went to YouTube. Needless to say, in the course of searching for the series, I got sidetracked in videos made by men speaking on the topic of gamer girls. The consensus view seems to be negative, calling women who play video games rude, incompetent, and attention-seeking. They would tell stories about women insulting and antagonizing, and particularly more aggressive than the men and attacking other women. Criticizing overtly sexual images of young girls or women provocatively posing with controllers or video game consoles. Now, this has not been my experience. As a matter of fact, I noticed that most of the complaints involved Xbox Live. So my question is, are these guys right about girl gamers? Or are they just butthurt over losing to a girl? What do you think? P.S. Did you know that Metal Gear is an allegory for the Bible? It's true. Okay.
Really?
Yeah, I did not know that.
I'll have to look into that.
That is a game theory I did not know. So, okay, so I think his larger question is, are girls awful in the gaming, or are they not?
This is where I think gender is not an interesting variable. This sounds like posers versus real gamers, quote unquote, what I would call real gamers. And I don't really think that's split down the line of girls and guys. This is another, like, I feel like a red herring, and I feel like this happens a lot with these sorts of issues. Just
one of those things where gender is easier to notice, so we're like, oh, she's a girl and she's a crappy gamer. So
yeah, exactly.
She sucks.
You get things more immediately obvious. If you get someone like, well, I guess like me, or people in my field who we constantly throw variables, so we measure a lot of things like gender, affiliation with the movement, for example, like how affiliated are you with gaming, that kind of thing, all those sorts of things. Then throw them into what we call, there's a few different ones, but discriminant function is one. Another one is like a logistic regression. There's a bunch of different ways to look about this, but what it does is it kind of shakes out the most important variables. Gender's not that important. It wouldn't show up here, I don't think. So the people who focus on that, I think, are misinformed, and the people who get defensive about that are also misinformed. I think it's not about that. I would say, hey, I would mention that I was offended. I would say, like oh, hey, I'm a girl and I play games, whatever. Like that's pretty crappy. I don't identify with those girls either, So I think instead of getting defensive about it, what you do is you redirect people like this. Maybe this is my history of redirecting people, but in like a therapy where I'm like, oh, you're thinking this is the problem, but let's look at this. But that's what I think is going on. I would say, yeah, I hate those girls too, and then they go, wait, what? I thought you're a girl gamer. I'd be like, yeah, I'm a girl gamer. She's not a girl gamer. She's a girl poser, or whatever. That's one interesting way to look at the dichotomy, but I don't think an interesting way is guys and girls. So I think the people who are making those videos are just are thinking of, it's how we put categories together. I'll use this on another episode, but has to do with how our brain categorizes things and how we pull them up, exemplars, prototypes, etc. But the way it works is essentially, when I say bird, you get a picture in your mind, like bird.
Yeah, okay. What Plato would call like the ideal bird.
Yeah. So tell me about that picture.
All right, it's a blue bird with it's about the size of a robin, and it's got a little beak and little yellow feet, and it's just flying around.
There you go. Okay. Yeah, I thought of bird, and I thought of a brown or blackish brown one with a blackish brown beast or beak, not beast, and and a light colored breast, but like a tannish color. See, we
Mm-hmm.
have different ideas in our minds because it has to do with experience, how we code things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what I didn't think about was, did you think about an ostrich?
Right.
Yeah,
No, I
it's
did not.
still that is still a bird, but you
Mm-hmm.
don't. It's not
In
immediately
my
obvious,
experience.
right? But if you were an ostrich farmer and I said bird, that's the first thing you might think of if you weren't exposed to a lot of other birds. So
Yeah.
what it has to do with this, it's just collecting the sum of your experiences with that group in the past, and for them, it's just been that it's been a bad experience. Don't get
Mm-hmm.
offended by that. Just redirect them and say like, I see that you've experienced a lot of these people and not a lot of girls that act like you do with games. Okay, that's not our fault as a female gender. That's your fault as perception.
Right.
So I think that's what's going on here. It's not an
Yeah.
interesting variable, guys and girls. The interesting variable is the fact that there's kind of two groups. One who uses video games because it's kind of a social hot spot right now,
Mm-hmm.
and then to gain some other thing. And then you've got people who play games just because they like playing games, and they're offended by those people.
Right. There's not something coded on the Y chromosome that's like a gamer gene. Like it's
Right.
just not a variable. It's we are there are girls that are gamers and there are girls that aren't gamers and there are guys that are gamers and guys that aren't gamers. But it's easier to notice the gender divide than it is to like look at their resume.
Right, and men are we're allowed to recreate more. As a species, we tend to recreate more,
Mm.
but we also work more. So we,
We work hard, we play hard, as the
yeah,
gay construction workers on The Simpsons once said.
yeah, and I'm using gender as an interesting variable here only because that's exactly what I'm trying to point out is that this is a there are people who work hard and they are women. There are people who work hard and they are men. But typically, like in primates, monkeys, the men play most of the time, 80 to I think it's like 80-some%, depending on the species. But I'm going to use macaques because they're one of the closest to us besides apes. And it's like I think 80-90% of the time is spent playing. The females not so much. And I think so. There might be a biological drive there. I'm not sure, but there certainly is a social imperative where
There's certainly a
like
cultural, yeah,
the
double
guy's out.
standard.
Yeah, the dad is 1950s dad. Is out in the den. He's working on his whatever, or out in the garage working on his car. And mom's like, "What's she doing?" Like household chores, right?
Mm.
That's pretty shitty. Like she doesn't get to do her hobby. So I think that's part of it too. Is that we're allowed to play, and because we're allowed to play, we're allowed to take it seriously, and we take it
Right.
seriously. And so gaming is kind of hard sometimes. So we can put the time in to make it a thing. So I think gender is an important variable for determining the social kind of construct of that, but I don't think
Right.
it's important for any other reason. It's not prescriptive.
Right.
It's how we should be.
It's not something that's gonna like if you take culture out of it, then we're gonna see different stories. Like if you
Yeah.
put us in a culture where men are encouraged to not play games and women are encouraged like a recreative like culture for women, then
Mhm.
we'll probably see a lot more female gamers. Like it's just
Yeah, exactly. It's not a big deal, guys. Yeah, so that's cool. Thanks for saying that. We got the new iTunes review. You want to read
all
that?
right, yeah, let's hear it.
It's by BM2KX. Smart and entertaining. 5 stars. Thank you for a great listening experience. This podcast is a great companion to my many hours grinding away on FF14. Nice. Sweet.
Oh yeah, that's
So
what I
cool.
use podcasts for. RPG grinding.
That's right, man.
Cool.
Um,
So
very
what was that
cool.
5-star review?
Yeah, thank you, BM2KX.
It
Appreciate that.
is, it is your offering is accepted.
Yes, and you were number 50, so appreciate that.
That's a pretty big deal. So last week we asked a question about Smash Brothers stories, and we got a lot of responses. I won't read them all, but just some of the highlights. I asked about different characters people like to play, and somebody even found that Smash Brothers commercial we referenced in the last episode.
Yeah.
Up there. So we had people who were Solid Snakers and Marth and Ness and Pikachu, kind of all over the gamut. I don't think anyone said like Snake was pretty popular, but a lot of different kinds. We had one person who liked Ganondorf because he was just Captain Falcon, but slower and harder hitting, which is more his style.
Yeah.
But I thought an interesting, really interesting story at the end. A guy named Carl said that he got into Smash Brothers Brawl in a big bad way, and he was addicted to playing Pikachu Pit and Sonic the Hedgehog. Well, he bragged to his friends that he was really good with Sonic, so one of them challenged him to a duel. Here are the terms. He plays his best character against Carl playing Sonic in a battle, and Carl only has to win one match out of 20. The fact that he suggested those terms is a red flag, right? So
Right.
they put $20 on the match, and Carl walks away $20 poor. A week later, he finds out that the guy who challenged him was a Smash Brothers Brawl tournament player. He never stood a chance, and he knew that.
Wow.
He's-
Wow, that's
He says
cool.
he's since become background checking before playing fighting games for money. That's kind of like those stories about pool hustlers, right? Like at the pool sharks who hustle and like, oh yeah, let's put some money on the table.
Yeah, right.
but Smash Brothers related. So I thought that was a fun little tale.
Amazing.
So for our question of the week, what should we find out this time? Favorite turtle, favorite game? What do you think? We could do a survey. We could just do a survey and see who's the most popular turtle.
Or we could get things fired off for the next one. We could ask both, maybe, or I don't know if we're gonna do the feminism one next time or not, but maybe. I think that's gonna be a good discussion. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe not.
All right.
I'll leave that up to you. You're good at these things.
Well, we'll put a couple questions up because I am curious because in my limited experience, you and I both love Michelangelo, but I wonder if there is an even distribution of turtle love for those four. So I'll put a survey up. You can just click your answer. You don't have to answer. You don't have to explain. And then we'll put a more feminist related question up for people who want to get more prosaic.
Yeah, sounds good. That's definitely something we're gonna probably use in the next one. So
Yeah.
good. Well, very cool. Yeah. Thanks
So
all. Thanks for the feedback. Yeah, hopefully we're doing feminism.
Yeah, we're trying to get some guests who are actual feminists on board, so it's not just us. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of self-identify as a feminist in a way, but we'll get into that later. But
Definitely.
Female feminists, just to balance out the genders a little bit better.
Yeah, because they've had personal experience with
Right.
sort of thing. Like I when I play a game, I speak in my like voice is male.
My male voice.
Yeah. But maybe I should do that. Oh, maybe I should practice. Like.
Oh yeah, we'll just gender flip for the week and then see what it's like.
Oh my God.
You remember that who wrote that book Black Like Me?
I don't know.
Oh, it was a really big book in the during the civil rights movement, where somebody basically darkened their skin. I forget how, but they made themselves look black,
Wow.
and then they lived like for a certain period of time as a black person, where nobody knew who they were, and just to experience like what it's like to be on the other side of the fence. It was
Wow.
called Black Like Me. Look it up. It was a pretty big like trying because part of the problem with these minority like movements or not even minorities like there's more women than men on the planet but these culturally unempowered movements is that we don't know what it's like to experience the sexism or the racism or the homophobia or whatever like
Right.
so woman like me we'll do a woman like me week where we try and see what it's like to be on the other side.
Yeah, I'll definitely do that. I hope I'll
Disguising our
practice
gender.
my girl voice and see if I can actually like do a vocal chat too, because I hear that that's a lot of the problem.
Yeah, there's voice modulators that could probably do that.
Okay, I'll try that.
Like definitely not your clone trooper helmet, but
Yeah. Go, go, go!
Roger that.
Moving out.
You can
right.
see the racism against New Zealanders with that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, we basically what we're saying is we don't like have experience with this firsthand very much, so it'd be great to get some women on board to talk about it.
Sure, sure. So great, yeah. And if we can't we've got a few that we're trying to pick from, and yeah, we'll try to get that nailed down. And if we don't, if another scheduling conflict happens, like let's say they can't record this week, but they want to do it, then we'll find something else to do. We've got a lot of topics we can cover, so.
Right.
Yeah.
So either way, we'll be back next week with something interesting.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles of the Game Theory Podcast. I've been one of your two hosts, Jeremiah.
And I am the other of those two hosts, Michelangelo. Called it.
Ah, man, we finna fight.
We finna fight.
All right. Well, thanks for sticking in and listening to another episode. We'll see you next week.
Bye.